You ready now? Sorry, he's just ready now.
For you,
Huh?
I just checked for you, but I don't know yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Can I give you mine?
Yep.
And then since we have I need to
Yep.
you guys.
1 second. And he said he's ready now. We're having internet issues. But it should be good. 1 second. Come on. Okay.
We have to stream this out on the Bayonne TV channel because I don't think firewall was configured at the City Hall. I think they replaced the router and never fixed the firewall, so we can't get into the station. So it's going out live on YouTube.
Let me tell Rich.
Okay.
Let me see if that affects the meeting.
Yeah, it's going out to Bayonne TV channel.
All right.
201?
563 5677.
I'll text you now.
Thank you.
When did they change the router? So they're checking out. Talking about it. I don't know. I was gonna say before. He's gonna turn up a second.
Good evening. Good evening, and welcome to the City of Bayonne special meeting for the month of October. At this time, we'll call the meeting to order. Can I have a roll call, please?
Chairperson Fiamonte.
Here.
Commissioner Villado is absent. Commissioner Veloz.
Here.
Commissioner Becker is absent. Commissioner Booker.
Here.
Commissioner Majorano. Here. Commissioner Barrow. Here. Commissioner Locke. Here. Commissioner Lawande is absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. All rise for the pledge. Next on the agenda is a statement with regard to the Open Public Meetings Act Sunshine Law. This special meeting of the City of Bayonne Planning Board has complied with the Open Public Meetings Act Sunshine Law. Annual notices of the schedule of regular meetings and the special meeting were mailed to both the Jersey Journal and Star Ledger newspapers within 10 days of the reorganization meeting held on December 13th, 2022. The schedule of regular meetings for calendar year 2023 is filed with the city clerk's office and has been posted on the bulletin board in the lobby of the municipal building. A copy of the agenda of tonight's meeting was faxed and/or mailed to the Jersey Journal and Star Ledger at least 48 hours prior to this meeting and is posted on the bulletin board in the lobby of the municipal building and the City of Bayonne website. Next on the agenda are the adoption of minutes of the regular meeting held on September 12th, 2023. Commissioners, you all received a copy of said minutes. Are there any recommendations for changes? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion to approve. I'll move.
Second.
And on the vote?
Chairperson Fiamonte.
Aye.
Commissioner Veloz.
Aye.
Commissioner Booker. Commissioner Mayorano.
Aye.
Commissioner Locke.
Aye.
Commissioner Barrow.
Aye.
Yeah, I think it's
Press green.
there are no communications, Madam Chairperson. Okay. With the adoption of the minutes, Chairperson Fiamonte. Aye. Commissioner Veloz.
Aye.
Commissioner Booker. Commissioner Locke.
Aye.
Commissioner Barrow.
Aye.
Commissioner Mayorano.
Aye.
Minutes have been approved. Chairperson, there is no communications this evening. Next on the agenda is item number 7P-23-018, Duke Realty Bayonne Urban Renewal LLC. The site is Avenue J, East 22nd Street and Hook Road, Block 466, lots 1, 2, 3, and 4, Block 478, lots 1 and 1.01, Block 465, Lot 9, Block 506, Lot 2. The applicant is seeking preliminary and final major site plan approval and bulk variance and/or design exceptions, waivers, relief to construct a total of 5 solar-ready warehouses totaling approximately 1,682,880 square feet on the southern parcel and proposed Lot 1 for use as warehouse distribution facility. A variance is being requested for additional ground sign along with 5 requested variances. Mr. Maselli is the attorney for the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Maselli.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, board professionals. My name is Michael Maselli. I am the attorney for the applicant Duke Realty Bayonne Urban Renewal LLC. As Mr. Campusano said, this is an application for Block 466, lots 1 through 4, Block 465, Lot 9, Block 478, lots 1 and 1.01, and Block 506, Lot 2. It's on 22nd Street. It's right in the Constable Hook area. This is the old, one of the sites, one of the parcels is the old Exxon site. And the other parcel is a portion of the IMTT tank farm. And IMTT will be the northern parcel, as you're looking at the map, and Exxon will be to the south with the waterfront at the bottom of the screen. With regard to Block 506, Lot 2, it is involved in this application. That is a Conrail parcel that runs right down the middle of the two sites. It bisects them. We have a license to cross from the Exxon site to the IMTT site that is executed with Conrail. So it's part of this application, but it's not really subject to local review. We're showing it because we want you to know that there is a connection between the two parcels and a way to run through the entire development. So this project is zoned under a redevelopment plan. It's the Central Constable Hook redevelopment plan, and that governs the Exxon parcel and the IMTT parcel. And this board recommended that redevelopment plan to the city council, and the council adopted that plan. These properties have been designated as an area in need of redevelopment with the board's recommendation, and for good reason. Historically, we know Bayonne's past with Exxon, and before that, Standard Oil. This is an oil and refinery use for over a century. It started in the late 19th century and carried through, I think, to the 80s, so it was late 20th century that we had a robust Exxon operation, or an oil operation. I think I saw a map, I think it was in the 40s, I could be wrong, but I think there were upwards of 800 tanks on the Exxon site at one point. And it's hard to fathom, but when I saw it, 800 tanks in that southerly parcel. But again, that went dark in the 1980s, and really nothing's happened there. Exxon was the most contaminated site in the state of New Jersey. There was litigation over it, there was a settlement over it. It was messy. The current IMTT site is part of that company's existing tank farms. It will not be needed for IMTT's long-term future operations. So those two sites combined presented an opportunity for a significant multi-phase project, and that's what you have before you. This is something that is modern, that will foster the remediation of an environmentally compromised site. As I said, Exxon was extremely environmentally compromised. I'm shocked to say this, and I'm happy to say it. The last time I visited, I think we were upwards of 90% done with the remediation of the Exxon site, on-site. I know Exxon has off-site responsibilities, on-site, it's almost done. So that's exciting already. There's already a benefit to the city for that, health-wise. My client saw that as an opportunity, as I said, and we created a project that we think will be an economic engine for the city and move Bayonne into the 21st century economy, and to reimagine our east side, which this site sat fallow for how long? And here we are in 2023. If it was the 80s, I think my uncle worked there, and that was when the plant closed. It's 2023, and here we are reimagining. I think it's the first step in what will be a larger redevelopment of Constable Hook, but it's a really good first step, and I'm excited to present this to you. And I'm excited, I don't normally talk about my clients in terms of what their capabilities are. I think it goes without saying, but I think it's important to understand the applicant here is Duke Realty Bayonne Urban Renewal. That is a subsidiary, or it's owned by Prologis. And for those of you who don't know who Prologis is, it is a REIT. It is perhaps the largest industrial property owner in the world. They develop spaces like this all the time. They have over 1 billion square feet of industrial space spread across the globe. They own thousands of buildings and have thousands of tenants. It's a top-tier company, and they don't just develop. They don't just get it approved and flip it. They own it. They're going to build it. This is going to be theirs. They're going to be here for the long haul. And so a company with real expertise is tackling a very challenging site with a project that, like I said, I'm very excited to bring this to you, and I'm looking forward to presenting the application to you. We have tonight, we're seeking preliminary final major site plan, as Mr. Camposano said. Our professionals will testify that the variance relief that is identified in the planner's report will largely be eliminated with some of the tweaks we made to the site plan that we'll discuss tonight. I think we're only going to have a variance by the time it's left over for number of signs, and we think that's justified. We have 2 witnesses planned for tonight. The first one is Mike Sousa from Hammer Engineering, and he is our project engineer, and I'd like to call him with your permission, Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you.
Before I do that, I'd like to enter our exhibits into evidence. What is it, A1 through A51? Okay.
Okay, we'll accept those into evidence.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maselli. You may call your first witness.
I do. Sure. My name is Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L, Sousa, S-O-U-S-A. I'm with Hammer Engineering.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Sousa, can you present your qualifications to the board, please?
Absolutely. My name is Michael Sousa, as previously stated. I'm a project manager at Hammerland Engineering.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you may have to move it up.
had an angle for my height.
Yeah, these
Better.
microphones have to be pretty close.
My name is Michael Sousa. I'm a project manager at Hammerland Engineering. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from NJIT in May of 2013, and I've practiced land development since then. My license in New Jersey is current and good standing, as well as all licenses in all other states. I've been accepted before planning and zoning boards throughout the state on applications industrial in nature, such as this, as well as residential commercial.
Okay, we accept Mr. Sousa as an expert witness.
Thank you.
And welcome.
Thank you.
Well-
Mr. Sousa, can you please just go over the existing conditions and the overall tract?
Absolutely. So, as previously stated, blocks 465, lot 9, block 466, lots 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'll subsequently refer to that as the northern development. That's the current IMTT location, just for ease of north and south. And block 478, lots 1.01 and 1, I'll refer to as the southern development, obviously the south part, just for ease of orientation. That's the formal Exxon parcel. As you see in the aerial exhibit, noted A47, the northern parcel is an active use. It has existing storage tanks. This parcel was recently before this board a year ago for a subdivision. We looked to subdivide blocks 465 lot 9 and block 466 lot 2 into one new proposed lot, and then a smaller triangle piece would remain as part of that subdivision. That subdivision was approved, but it is not yet perfected, which is why that's not shown on this aerial exhibit today. One of the conditions, which I'll be able to show you later this evening, will be that we are providing an access road to that proposed lot 2 in our new proposed development. But as of right now, the existing use will continue to function. The IMTT portion will have a standing lease, and that lease will be held until it terminates. Development on that parcel, as well as remediation on that parcel, won't commence until that lease is terminated, give or take. The southern development is the former Exxon parcel. As Mr. Maselli previously stated, that's been closed since about the 80s. That lot's approximately 81.95 acres in size. And I apologize, the northern lot was 45.76 acres. But a good portion of the southern lot is also covered by the Kill Van Kull. Our property does extend into the bay. However, our limits of disturbance as well as development extend just past the bulkhead. I'll show you that a little later, but that will be for bulkhead remediation. It's currently in a little bit of a dilapidated state, so we want to try to fix that up, as well as providing outfalls so that we do not rely on Bayonne's stormwater infrastructure for our discharges. Yes. Sure. No problem. I apologize. Sure. The properties all have frontage on different roads. The northern development has frontage along East 22nd Street as well as Avenue J. The southern development has frontage along Hook Road. Throughout the surrounding uses of the site, it's pretty much all industrial in nature, with the Conrail property running through in between both parcels. A little bit further to the west, there is a commercial development towards 440 as well. One item of note as well is that of the proposed lot 1, which is the northern development, all those existing tanks will be removed in our proposed development. Ms. Liskowski, could you turn to Exhibit 48, please? 48, the site plan rendering. So the site plan rendering, it's similar to what's already been presented to the board. There have been some minor modifications to that. But I'd first like to highlight that the proposed use will be warehouses throughout the entire facility. We submit approximately 1,683,000 square feet of total warehouse. The Southern Development's warehouse, which I note as Building 1, will be 1,076,000 square feet, 579, square feet. And then Buildings 2 through 5, which will be running clockwise from Building 1, will be 151,613 for Building 2, 124,496 for Building 3, 110,245 for Building 4, and 219,947 square feet for Building 5. Looking at the site as a holistic development, we will provide a 35.7% building coverage for the entire site. We're actually reducing, we'll be below the threshold allowable for the redevelopment plan. For impervious coverage, we're at 74%. Something important to note about that is when we look at stormwater and vehicular area specifically, we coordinated with DEP extensively throughout this application, and we're actually going to be reducing the vehicular area on site. So not only are we improving the roadway network by providing properly paved roads, thoughtful traffic circulation, but we're actually reducing the amount of area that cars and trucks even travel throughout this site. Building heights throughout the development do vary. Building 1, which is the southern development, the peak height's going to be 52 feet. And then the buildings 2 through 5 will range from 48 feet to 50 feet at its peak height. The mechanical units are not anticipated to be able to be seen at street level. As a condition of approval, we will happily submit during the building department process a line of sight exhibit if required. But due to the height of the building as well as the difference from the street side, we don't anticipate any visual from the mechanical units. And if that does become apparent during our analysis, we'll provide appropriate screening. In addition to the warehouse buildings that are quite prominent throughout the site, we do have some additional support uses as well as one more primary use. At the southern portion of the site, we're proposing a waterfront use, which will be a port use with a scale house. This has no tenant attached to it. So it's preliminary in nature and may modify due to the needs of the tenant. It may need a more intensive port use or less intensive. We won't know until Prologis won't know until there's a tenant viable, and if the change is drastic enough, not only will we approach your board professionals, but if necessary, approach the board itself for that change. In coordination with PSE&G, we may need a electrical substation. That's one of the changes that have occurred on this colorized site plan. If you look near that Hook Road entrance at the southeast leg of the site, just to the northwest of that roundabout, you'll see a flag sign, for lack of a better term. That's where we're anticipating the substation to be. It's near where the existing substation is, but we don't know for certain what size it will be until we finalize coordination with PSE&G. But we wanted to show that in our use this evening, just to try to solidify it as an accessory use, which is permissible by the redevelopment plan. The other accessory uses would be the potential maintenance and repair facility, as well as a hydrogen storage tank area. These are areas that may be required for a tenant that may occupy Building 1, or a combination of tenants as we've provided. It will be a tenant-specific use. While we don't anticipate constructing it day one, but if a tenant requires it, we would like the flexibility to be able to install that structure, or those structures. And then the final accessory uses that exist throughout the site are guardhouses. That's just for security purposes to regulate the truck court areas as they enter and exit the facilities. Speaking of tenants and phasing of that nature, we've designed the site to allow for a degree of phasing, which I'll speak to a little bit later this evening, but all parking, we are compliant overall, but each individual building has enough parking to sustain itself. This will allow for us to be able to build buildings 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 at different time intervals, but still allow for proper car parking for those individuals. We've anticipated a traditional warehouse user for this area. As such, for building 1, we're providing a total of 392 parking spaces. That's for a traditional user based on our anticipated employee count for a building this size. We don't anticipate an intense user. If that was anticipated, the site plan would change. Then we would be submitting back to the board professionals and potentially the board itself for additional parking, changes in trailer parking, things of that nature. But as of right now, with the anticipated tenant, which none has, to my knowledge, has been acquired yet, as of this morning, we anticipate there to be sufficient parking for that personnel. In addition to that, 392 spaces. Building 2 will have 148 spaces. Building 3 will have 104 spaces. Building 4 will have 128 spaces. And Building 5 will have 160 spaces. This totals to about 932 spaces throughout the site. Another change that has occurred since we submitted the application was with respect to EV parking. Originally, we submitted for 35 make-ready spaces distributed throughout the site. Your board professionals did identify that variance being a little short. Prior to this being issued, though, one of Prologis' initiatives is a net zero standard. We anticipate having 5% day one EV parking for each building. So this is actually going to increase us to, looking at how the site works out, will be a total of 50 EV parking spaces. But it'll be 5% based on the parking provided at CO for each individual building. These parking spaces will both be ADA as well as near the building entrances to allow for short transit for those people. We will also provide provisions for potential expansions based on tenant needs. But we will be in compliance with we'll be in substantial compliance with the model DCA ordinance for electric vehicles by not only providing make-ready spaces, but day one EV spaces. Another item of note is that this total parking count does not take credit for the model ordinance's 2-to-1 ratio. So we are still counting even our EV spaces at a 1-to-1 ratio. Another feature of the site plan will be the truck courts themselves. Building 1 will slightly differ from buildings 2 through 5. Building 1's truck court will be a total of 190 feet. That allows for a 60-foot loading dock area, a 75-foot, which is just 5 feet larger than your traditional truck court drive aisle, and then 55-foot trailer spaces. The rest of the site, which is buildings 2, 3, 4, and 5, will have a 70-foot drive aisle. Slight reduction, but meeting industry standards for the drive aisles themselves. We'll actually be providing a total of 284 loading docks throughout the facilities. And for trailer parking, we're actually providing a total of 440 trailer stalls. The only building that does not have a dedicated trailer stalls will be building 4, which is the northeast building, but that'll be a tenant item that will make them aware of that they don't have by right stalls adjacent to their use. But the industrial park will still be one industrial park. One of the conditions of the subdivision application that appeared before this board back in October of last year was us providing a emergency vehicle and maintenance roadway for the proposed Lot 2. Running from the northwest portion of the site, running south and then east towards that triangle piece, we provide a 25-foot roadway. This roadway had been previously reviewed by the fire official, and it was deemed to conform to emergency access needs. We will be providing, not just for this roadway, but for the facility throughout, signalized traffic signaling, so that way emergency vehicles can access gated areas without any encumbrance as well. The facility itself will be serviced for access via two main roadways. The first one will be East 22nd Street. There is a main corridor running north to south, which is about 40 feet wide, and then there's a secondary access on Hook Road. The north to south roadway will be protected by an easement that will benefit the southern development, so that way they can function today. The southern portion, the Hook Road access, there was a question in the engineering review letter which spoke to how the circulation anticipates functioning in that area. We will be providing additional signage, and I'll speak to the requirements for that. But one of the ideas for this turnaround area was that, let's say someone's driving down Hook Road and enters our property, we want to give them an area so that they can spin around once they notice that they're not supposed to be in the Prologis area without entering the secured facility. That roundabout was provided with a truck in mind, and it is able to turn fully. A vehicle circulation exhibit can be presented to the board professionals, proving that point. The traffic engineer did conduct a study on our anticipated uses. He found that he took a conservative approach to it and actually anticipated a slightly more intensive use than we're proposing today, and he found no off-site improvements to be necessary. There is no degradation of levels of service that require improvements such as signaling, traffic signals, changes to traffic signals, additional lanes and lanes, shouldering. None of that was necessary as part of our analysis or part of the traffic engineer's analysis. But should it be determined by the board professionals that there is some off-site impacts to what we would need, we'd be happy to provide our fair share. The next item I wanted to speak to is stormwater management. I touched on this a little earlier, but we anticipate stormwater running all to the Kilvan Cull. We will not be dependent on the city's stormwater infrastructure, which you guys have combined storm and sewer here. We will be running gravity all the way to the Kilvan Cull by 3 separate outfalls. This stormwater infrastructure has already been reviewed and approved both by DEP and by Army Corps of Engineers. We're in conformance to the regulations as it relates to a site that's adjacent to a tidal water body. It does differ slightly, but we are in full compliance compared to other areas that are throughout the city and state. Utilities are the next item that I wanted to speak to. We are working with your board professionals with regards to sewer. We have received initial will serves from PVSC, from the city of Bayonne for water and sewer, as well as from PSC&G for gas and electric. But when it comes to sewer specifically, due to the surcharge events, large rainfalls that occur and flooding occurs, there's an extreme burden on the city's stormwater, on the city's sewer infrastructure. As such, while we have not finalized the full total of sanitary sewer that we will need for our site, we will be providing on-site storage. We'll coordinate with your engineers just to make sure we comply with that. But that final number of what we'll need to store hasn't been decided yet. What we anticipate is providing storage near to our pump station. Internally, all of our sewer flow will flow via gravity to a pump station that's located at the northeast corner near the Conrail crossing on the southern development. From there, we're going to have a pump station that will pump it out. In an intermediary step, as coordinating with your offices, we'll have a tank, most likely underground storage tank, similar to like a Xerxes that you'd see for a gas station, that will contain the sewer flow for our site for a certain number of hours, and then it will pump it to an existing manhole on East 22nd Street. From there, it will flow gravity to the city's pump stations and then be treated by Passaic Valley Sewerage Commission. With respect to water, right now, we do not show a water tower, and we do not anticipate the need for a water tower. There's 16-inch mains that run through our site. It has sufficient pressure to accommodate the fire flow for these buildings. One additional item when it comes to utilities is there is an existing BEC pipeline that's going to need a slight rerouting. It was conflicting with Building 5, which is the bottom right-hand corner building on the northern development. We've coordinated with BEC, and we're going to be rerouting that pipeline. There is an additional utility and existing easement that runs into Building 3, which will be removed when IMTT starts their decommissioning process of the northern development. One item that we do showcase, and it runs adjacent to that maintenance road, is a pipeline rerouting. Although they are going to be demolishing that northern development's tanks, they still have existing uses to the east and to the west. So we're accommodating that by providing area for their pipeline. They will be installing and permitting their pipeline under a separate application, but we are coordinating with them and we are providing space for them through approximately 50-foot wide access as well as utility easement that runs from east to west. One of the variances that we were requesting, that we were seeking tonight, or that were identified tonight, was with respect to lighting. There is an area, or there are areas, I apologize, along the maintenance road which exceeds that 1-foot candle maximum. That's mainly for security. They're going to be driving trucks through areas that need to be secured per Homeland Security, as well as has combustible materials. So those areas are illuminated a little brighter than the rest of the site. These obstructions will be mainly internal, but also will be in conjunction with operations, shared operations with the future Prologis development as well as the existing IMTT developments. This is an ongoing coordination effort that IMTT has identified that they want to have well illuminated, and they've actually requested some additional illumination in certain areas. So we're requesting, although it has not been submitted yet, that the board allow us to further illuminate that maintenance roadway just to provide a safe area for them to travel. Again, and this is under the security provision, which wouldn't be a variance, but I do want to make the board aware that it is something we are identifying as a potential exceedance and receive approval for that. The other comment from the planner with respect to landscaping, which was with a Japanese pine tree, black pine tree, we'll replace it. We'll work with the planner's office to find a suitable species for that. I think an important feature that's being shown on our site plan that was not on our color rendering that was not on our site plan is the open space recreational use. We had dedicated that area on our application, which was we were providing a 25% on-site, and then the 75% we would contribute to a fund to provide elsewhere throughout Bayonne. But the on-site, I wanted to speak to it because you'll see in the southern development a very dark green kind of triangle portion. Oh. So where I'm pointing, the dark green area, that's our open space recreational use for the southern development. It goes just past the 0.85 acres that we were anticipating, so we're providing slightly more on-site. The reason for this is we're going to be providing a shade structure, canopy shade structure with seating, tables. We have meandering walkways due to it almost being an acre in size. We were able to provide some walkways that run from east to west, north to south. At the northern tip, there's actually another seating area. We're providing landscape berms to try to visually screen someone who's going to sit in that area. Understand that they're in the middle of a truck facility, right? But that will give some buffering to not only the visual of the trucks when they're trying to decompress for lunch or whatever, as well as an auditory buffer, a slight auditory buffer. Additionally, at the northern portion, we're providing a smaller area. I believe that to be a half acre. It's approximately a half acre in this northern portion, right at the very tip of the northern development, along Avenue J, that's going to have another shade structure. The shade structure's colors will be correlating to Prologis' colors. So that green, white, blue, brown, but it's not going to be a vibrant, it's going to be slightly muted, just so that way it's not as an eye attention-seeking item. The rest of the site, we do provide shade trees, evergreens, shrubs. A comment that was requested is that we provide some additional diversity to our shrubs, which we have no problem complying with, and we'll provide some additional plantings as well. The planner's letter identified a potential variance along Hook Road for buffering. We'll comply by planting those trees that are required per the redevelopment plan. It was just a slight error that we didn't account for. The overall species will be native species to the state, though, and along the southern portion of the parcel, along the bay, we had to select salt-resistant trees and plant species because they will be affected by the kill, and it's ultimately connected to the Newark Bay. Alicia, could you, could you turn to Exhibit A50, the signage exhibit? So there was two variances identified during the review of our plans when it came to signage. The first was with respect to sign height, which we've now eliminated. The previously submitted plans showed a sign of 10 foot 3 inches in height. We've reduced that to the tallest sign being 8 feet. That will no longer require a variance for that. Those 8 foot tall signs are anticipated to be along Avenue J at the very top portion of Avenue J of our site, as well as along East 22nd Street, the western part of our site. The rest of the signs for monument signs will actually be 6 feet in height. Additionally, almost half of the allowable 10-foot height limit. We are proposing for 8 signs to be introduced onto the site. Those 8 signs are for orientation purposes. We're going to be providing a new area that has a total of 5 buildings on the southern parcel that hasn't been active since the 80s. Not everybody will know how to traverse the area. Not everybody will know what's coming up in the area. As such, we wanted to identify not only what the industrial park area will be, but also internally each individual building. We're providing 3 street identifiers, if I may. One along the western portion of our site along East 22nd Street, another along the northern portion of our site along Avenue J, and then a third along Hook Road, our connection. So those 3 are going to be identifiers, so that way when you're first entering the site, you know you're coming into the Prologis Industrial Park area. The other 5 signs are all going to be internal. There's one located at right when you cross Conrail at the southern parcel, just to identify building 1. The other 4 are actually going to be located at this intersection, at the 4-way intersection as you run from north to south. Those are the reasons that we're asking for this sign variance. We're identifying a total of 5 buildings. We're adjacent to 3 streets. As of today, we might be adjacent to 4 streets, which we'll speak about a little later, but we wanted to properly identify our site for someone who's not only new to the area, because truck drivers, I know, they go cross country, they go states, they go to different countries. My dad was a truck driver, so he would do 3 months out, 3 weeks in, and he was driving wherever he needed to. You don't always know where you're going, so signage does help. we felt that that was an important item on this park. Speaking to the additional roadway that was recently introduced, as we weren't aware of that, we weren't able to provide a provision for signage on that roadway, but if it would be acceptable to the board, if that roadway was to become a requirement of our application, I think we would like the right to be able to provide a sign along that road identifying our parcel, which would further increase our variance, but it would stay within the same theme of identifying our parcel for people that are entering our parcel. The signs themselves would be the Prologis colors. It would be green, black, and gray. It would have Prologis with the Prologis logo at the very top, and then we would have tenant-specific information. Some of these buildings may have more than one tenant, so there may be multiple users identified for each building, or it may just be one single user. I think that's going to be a leasing issue that we'll determine later on. If a specific tenant were ever to request additional signage beyond what we're providing here, we would be back before the board. We don't anticipate the need for that, but I just wanted to identify that we have had that in our minds as a potential thought. And I apologize, but one item I forgot to mention during my site plan testimony was the separation from the tanks. As I stated previously, in the northern development, all of the tanks that are on the northern parcel will be removed from our development. With how the existing tanks are constructed, the requirement is that we have to have half the diameter of that tank. That's the minimum separation for any building that's on the same property. I understand we're on a separate property, but the largest potential setback that we would need to meet is 74.5 feet throughout the site, north and south. The closest building that we have to any tanks is actually 120.6 feet. So we're nearly double, we well meet the requirement and almost double the requirement as necessary for a setback from an existing tank. These tanks on site, there was a variance that was approved for the northern development due to the proximity to the property line. That tank's gonna get removed. That was located at the southeast portion of property 1, and that tank will no longer be there, relieving that lot from that variance that was previously approved.
Excuse me, Mr. Souza, are you referring to the NFPA regulations?
Yes,
You
I
say
am.
that, okay, so
Yeah.
you're saying it's double the requirement for?
Yeah, it's nearly double. It's not exactly double where, I can give you a building by building analysis if you'd prefer. I just tried to keep it a little broad where.
No, testimony's fine, I was just confirming when
Okay.
that's what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
it was the NFPA requirement where, due to the tanks being foam insulated or protected by foam, that triggers the setback requirement to being half the diameter of a tank. The largest tank is actually located at the southeast corner on the southern parcel. That tank's about 150 feet wide, which is where the 75 feet regulation, and distance from that tank to building 1 is actually 291 feet.
Okay.
So, in that case, we're tripling. But I wanted to highlight the biggest separation that we need to the closest we are. The closest area is actually building 2 from those tanks on the west side. Those tanks actually require a 57.5-foot buffer, and we're actually 120.6 feet away. So we are double with respect to each individual setback, but looking at the overall site, we are well in the clear for the NFPA regulations.
Excellent, I appreciate it, thank you.
No problem. And then the final item that I wanted to speak about is just permitting in general. We have submitted to outside agencies for approvals. We submitted to NJDEP for waterfront development, flood hazard area, and a water quality certificate, which I stated previously that we did actually obtain. We submitted to Army Corps of Engineers for our outfalls, the bulkhead repair and maintenance. We have successfully obtained that as well. We've submitted to Hudson County Planning Board. We were deemed exempt. We've submitted to the Hudson Essex Passaic Soil Conservation District. They've approved our soil erosion application. Any pending submissions like NJDEPs for a treatment works application, NJDEP timelines, those are pending based on coordination with not only the planning board as well as the board professionals. Very specifically, the treatment works application, we really wanted to lock in what our storage requirement will be prior to submitting to DEP. I believe that concludes.
Thank you. Mr. Sousa, I'd like to circle back on a couple of things just quickly. And these buildings are all solar-ready warehouses, correct?
Excuse me?
They're solar-ready warehouses?
Yes,
correct?
they will be solar-ready warehouses. We'll also be providing LEED certification for these buildings. We'll be requesting that be a condition of CO, as the building itself is as much of a component of LEED certification as a site plan. So we are tracking towards a LEED certification, but the final plans will dictate what LEED we hit. So we would ask that to be a condition of CO for each individual building.
I just want to reiterate, you said that you would, that we're going to provide screening for the rooftop equipment, correct? If it's visible, we'll screen it.
Correct. If it's visible, we'll provide screening for the rooftop equipment.
The guard shack and the maintenance buildings, the heights of both of those accessory structures comply?
They will comply. The maintenance building, we anticipated to have a peak height of 30 feet, and the guard shack's approximately 12 feet.
With regard to the roadway that's recommended or requested in the planner's report, is it fair to say that we would agree to that as a condition and to work with the city, but we'd have to study the impacts to our site plan?
Correct. I believe that we haven't had time to digest that as we recently received the roadway, but we would be happy to work with the city professionals to provide that. The request would be that it doesn't put undue burden on our application. There are regulations that we're conforming to. There is a lot of remediation that we're doing on the site, so there's going to be a lot of coordinating efforts to try to accommodate that roadway.
With regard to the additional sign that you requested, that sign, besides the number of signs, which will increase to 9, would it be compliant with the regulations in the redevelopment plan?
It would likely be the 8-foot sign that we're presenting along Avenue J as well as East 22nd Street.
This might be going out of order, but I just want to address it. There was a request in one of the reports, and I can't remember which one. I think it might have been the planner's report about a shuttle to the 22nd Street light rail station. Can you just address that, please?
Sure. So as part of the redevelopment plan, it's understood that the board would set a threshold for when a shuttle would be required. We would just need clarification on when that shuttle would be required. Prologis would be happy to provide an analysis as we not only find tenants for each building, but find out what the workforce is really going to be coming from. If we find that our tenant structure and our employee structure, Prologis' employee structure, has a need for that, we'll identify that in the report, but we'll also submit that report to the board's professionals so that there will be a peer review on the city's behalf. But at this time, we don't identify the need for that shuttle service as part of our application.
Okay. Let's talk about setbacks. All setbacks are compliant?
Correct. All setbacks are compliant. The one setback that was identified, or the buffer specifically along Hook Road, will comply by providing the screening as necessary.
Jumping back to the open space recreational area, the areas we're showing, that's not the end of the story, right? There's an additional contribution that we'll be making?
Correct. We're providing 25% on-site, but there's a 75% off-site contribution, monetary provided to Bayonne to be able to provide what's necessary throughout the site.
And that's about, I think we calculated that out to a little over $1 million, correct?
I'll defer to you on the number, but yes, that does sound correct.
Site circulation, can you just take us through quickly what the road network will look like with the Conrail crossing in it? Sure.
Alicia, could you go back to the site rendering exhibit 48? So there are going to be two access points to our site, or two primary access points to our site. The first access point I want to speak to is the intersection of Avenue J and East 22nd Street. We believe that's going to be the principal driver since it's closest to 440. There is an existing ingress-egress easement on the IMTT parcel as it exists today. In the future, we'll provide this north to south roadway that will be about 40 feet wide. This, again, we believe that this is going to provide most of the needs for the site. We're going to have one crossing along Conrail. There was a slight interpretation error where I noted two crossings going across Conrail, one for the north, one for the south. The planner identified it as one. I'll defer to the planner on that identification as one. Yeah, I think it was just a interpretation difference. But we were compliant either way with the Conrail crossing requirements for that area. We would then cross Conrail, and then trucks entering the building one would be able to go to the west, which would have a guardhouse, or to the south, which would be also a fenced-off area. This circulation on the southern end is going to modify slightly due to coordination with that potential roadway. The other access point is along Hook Road, and as I previously stated, we do provide a turnaround that should someone be entering off of Hook Road and they're erroneously going to our site, they'll be able to get back onto Hook Road. One item I wanted to speak to that was identified in the planner's letter is with respect to phasing. I do have an exhibit prepared, but I didn't showcase it during my testimony, where our first phase is what we're currently remediating, which is the southern development. We anticipate to build this building first. In that intermediary time, initial access will be on Hook Road, but there's also coordination so that we can continue to access off of East 22nd and Avenue J. If I may, Alicia, could you turn to exhibit, just for ease of discussion, exhibit 60? 60? Oh, I'm sorry, 51. I wrote it wrong. Phasing plan. This phasing plan was included in the overall set. This is just colorized to make it easier for us to be able to discuss. The green is what we anticipate to be phase one of the development, which is what was currently under remediation, ongoing remediation today. We plan on building that building first. Due to the necessary remediation on the north to south roadway, there's gonna be an intermittent time where we have to provide some temporary roadways to clean up these areas, to make them suitable. That's where there's basically a 1A and a 1B that's in purple that runs from north to south, which is 1A. 1B is in blue that wraps around the northern development, which is the existing maintenance road. We would provide a temporary curb cut, which complies with our proposed development's curb cut. But again, this is just for the needs of remediation. Phase two, that's more of a broad stroke, pen stroke here. Based on site needs, tenant needs, remediation efforts, and how much remediation is needed in every individual zone, the phase two buildings 2, 3, 4, and 5, will likely not be built all at the same time. Based on when we can remediate these efforts, when IMTT's decommissioning process commences and how that's phased through our coordination with IMTT, we'll have to build buildings as we can and as we go. As such, I believe we'll be seeking zoning protections for an extended zoning protections. Due to the nature of remediation, we're not sure how much remediation is needed, how long it'll take. So we may need a little longer on our time clock for our approval on that.
Okay, so just to circle back, the truck courts, did you go through the details on the truck courts?
We did.
Okay. The buildings, the appearance of the buildings, those meet any regulations in the redevelopment plan, and they're attractive and well-designed?
They do. We do provide, we do have renderings for all the buildings, which is exhibit 50. If this was 51, that would have been 50. I'll speak ahead of seeing the exhibit. Our architect did prepare, I'm sorry, it would have been 49, because that was signage. I'm sorry, I told you the wrong number. The building 1 is our showpiece, right? It's a million square foot building. I don't think anyone will deny that being a showpiece item. It's branded in Prologis' colors. We do have, I think, a very attractive entranceway with the appearance of a 2-story entrance, glass and spandrel glass. So the first story will be glass that you can see through. The second story you can't see through, but it does give a great appearance. We are providing architectural relief throughout the building with both horizontal and vertical banding. That tannish color that you see at the top of the building, there's a horizontal band that runs throughout the building, and also at set intervals, there's a vertical band. So you're not just gonna see a white or off-white building that just mutes your vision. You do have some visual breaks as you look from left to right. This will be for building 1, which again, centerpiece, a little bit stronger of a viewpoint. If we can scroll to, I believe, page 4 of the PDF. Keep going, I apologize. I'll be able to showcase the rendering, the next page down, I believe. Or the next page after that, there's a lot of elevations. Keep going. Okay. This is building 2 being showcased in this rendering, which will be similar throughout. Buildings 2, 3, 4, and 5 are gonna have very similar entryways with the exception of them being at different corners. But this very much mimics building 1 with the 2-story glass-like appearance. The colors are earthy tones that again are the same as building 1 or similar to the untrained eye from like my own. And we do have those vertical and horizontal breaks with the banding, vertical and horizontal banding. So we'll be able to provide an attractive building for the area, but it's not just gonna be your slabs of white throughout the entire thing. You'll be able to identify all the Prologis buildings in this park because they're gonna all have a common theme as well for their office space entryways.
Okay, parking spaces and drive aisles all comply?
All comply.
Let's go to, you mentioned that there's an access road that will allow access to that little tail parcel that would be retained by IMTT. That easement was approved as part of the subdivision application, right? We're just paving, the improvement now is being
Correct.
installed, right?
Correct.
Okay. And signal preemption for, we can provide those to emergency access vehicles trying to access through our gates and such?
That is correct.
Easements, there are easements on the property that were mentioned in the engineer's report. How
Correct.
are we going to handle those?
We'll handle those. There's conflict in easements like the BEC pipeline that we're rerouting. Some will be removed, some will be replaced, like the ingress-egress easement that runs from north to south. But we'll work with the board professionals to provide clarification on which easements are staying, which easements are going, and which easements are just being adjusted.
The Conrail crossing that you mentioned, there's a license agreement approved by Conrail. It's in
Correct.
place and signed by both parties, correct? Refuse, how will we be handling garbage here?
So Prologis and will plan to have a private hauler haul away all refuse. As noted in the planner's report, we do request that this be a condition of CO, the proof of having a contract. We wouldn't, or Prologis wouldn't contract an individual without knowing the needs of that specific building. So that will be, as a request, a condition of CO, but a private hauler will be utilized. We do provide compactors in the truck courts, generally 2 per building. Building 1 will actually have 4.
You mentioned LEED, the project will meet LEED certification requirements, correct?
That is correct. And as stated previously, we would request that that be a condition of CO due to the importance of the building in the LEED certification and not just the site plan.
And this site was raised to meet with all applicable regulations, correct?
Correct.
Lighting, besides the foot candles that you recommended be treated for security purposes as an exceedance that's allowed, any other exceedances on site, or do we comply?
No, we are fully compliant with the overall lighting plan.
The pole heights, all that
Correct.
Locations, all that matches with what the redevelopment plan
Correct.
requires, right? Okay, let's go to, you mentioned that the landscape buffer, we're going to provide that and comply. Did we talk about the substitution of the type of tree at the northern end?
Correct, the Japanese black pine, which is located near Building 3 on the western portion of the northern parcel, will replace it.
You mentioned phasing. Our redevelopment agreement has a phasing schedule, correct, in it?
As I've been informed, correct.
Yeah, so, you know, we're looking for flexibility on that, right? In accordance with the redevelopment agreement. We want the approval here to be flexible like our redevelopment agreement, correct?
Correct. We'd be seeking extended zoning protections.
Okay, let me just double check and make sure I got everything. I think that's all of my questions. I think that's all the questions I have. Let me just make sure. Yep, that's it. That's all I have. Open it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Souza. Commissioners, are there any questions for Mr. Souza regarding his testimony? Okay, well, we will pass the technology down.
Academy and all of this thing on? Okay. Hello.
How you doing?
Fantastic. How you doing?
It's another day.
Couple quick questions. The site that is water adjacent with the potential for a tenant with a waterborne use need, the site and that potential tenant will be subject to MARSEC or?
I believe so, yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
On the buildings, obviously, they're so far out that they're not, you have no commitments yet, I can only assume, unless
Correct.
somebody's really
Not that we know of.
God bless them. So, but typically, I mean, I think you mentioned a couple of uses, but anything from conventional warehouse distribution, pick and pack, fulfillment, freezer?
We
no.
don't anticipate freezer where
No
we would need that
freezer,
cold
refriger-
storage with the 70-foot tall chiller towers. We're not anticipating e-commerce right now. That would impact our parking greatly. We would be, like I said, before either professionals or the board itself for a layout adjustment, right? We would need a lot more parking. I think the number ends up being in the 2000s where we only provide a total of 900.
Gotcha.
So.
Not a
we're-
use you're cultivating.
That's not what we're anticipating with
Okay.
this application tonight.
Potentially, if you didn't get the other uses that you envision, data centers, is that something you would pivot on or no?
I would have to defer.
I don't think that's, is that allowed by the redevelopment plan? I don't think it is. I'd have to double check.
I'm
I think
not
they-
certain.
I think
I'm
they-
just curious, it's only as it relates to job,
I
Job,
couldn't.
okay.
We can discuss that, but I'm not certain. I think that would be a very tenant-specific, and
Okay.
No impact.
I think that would be a separate use that we would have to seek some approval for, if I'm not mistaken as
Okay.
well.
In addition to what I can only assume will be required street addresses for these buildings, whatever they may be, will you continue, you talked about the wayfinding and that stuff, the buildings will be numbered as well?
Yeah, each
Continue
building
to
will be numbered. We did have an example of that on the, not only the signage exhibit, but also the renderings. So each building will be identified just by a building number and the Prologis logo, and that's where I stated we don't anticipate having or tenant-specific building facade signage, and if that ends up being the case, we'll be before the board again for that request.
Understood, okay. And that's it, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. Any other commissioners with questions?
Yes, I do have,
Okay.
Madam Chair. I try to understand, or if you can clarify to me, what design accession waiver, to me, what I understand is it means that does not comply with the prevailing requirements, right? So my question will be, if that's the case, what negative impact you think might have in terms of traffic, safety, storm, raining? I mean, because if it does not comply with the prevailing requirements, right?
With the what requirements? I'm
With
sorry?
the requirements, the the requirements.
It does. I think I could be speaking out of turn, but we comply with all design requirements. The only deviations that I think are left are related to signage. I
That
think.
is correct.
I
We were
think-
able to eliminate all the variances that were identified. The one is for signage count, which I stated is for circulation and building identification. Most of the exceedance really occurs in the intersection for the 4 buildings at the northern development. The rest are just located along the streets that we front.
So meaning, will be no negative impact in traffic in that particular area?
No, we submitted a traffic study, and I think it was a conservative count.
Yeah,
right? Am I right?
it was a conservative, so for traffic, we don't have a variance for traffic. We actually don't degrade the level of services through the traffic analysis. And based on the traffic analysis that was provided by Dynamic Engineering, we do not need to provide any off-site improvements. So there are no negative impacts anticipated, or substantial negative impacts anticipated with our development that would require off-site improvements.
Okay, due to the huge project, do you anticipate the time or window of operations in that particular warehouse?
So based on initial conversations, it can be a 3-shift, it could be a 2-shift. I think it's very tenant-driven. But as we're not in the middle of the residences, we're really in an
Right.
industrialized area. A lot of that noise would be kind of contained, right? The surrounding uses are all industrial with boats that come up on the docks at various hours, Conrail trains that run through and honk their horns, existing trucks that run through with all the other warehouses. It's very much in relation to the area, and but I don't think we can confirm that we'll have a 2-shift or a 3-shift operations, as we're not aware of a tenant at this time.
And Commissioner, I know that this has been something that you worried about in the past.
Right.
This application is asking for 20-year extended zoning protection, because this isn't going to all be built at once. It's not going to be 1.6 million.
phased.
It's going to be phased. We're asking for 20-year zoning protection so that we can build it out slowly. I think our redevelopment agreement anticipates something in that neighborhood. So it's not going to be, we're going to plop these all down all
Yeah,
at once, and
perfect.
there's going to be all sorts of trucks all over the place immediately. It's going to be phased in over time. So I know that you were concerned about that with the Bayview application. And then when
yes,
we
I
said that
do.
it was going to be broken up, you were a little bit more
Yes, sir.
at ease. And I hope that that puts you a little bit more at ease with in terms of the size of the project.
Good enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And just to kind of piggyback off of that, when you mentioned the 20-year zoning extension, I think thinking long-term for 20 years and hearing our commissioner's question about traffic, I know there was some testimony regarding the traffic and providing fair share. However, my suggestion would be that at some point, the traffic impact be revisited as the 20 years goes on, because where we are today may be very different in 20 years in terms of traffic on those back roads.
We will do that. I think as we go forward with tenancies, we'll know more about the actual traffic impact, and that might be the time to revisit it. As we said, we don't really have a locked-up tenant, at least Mr. Sousa and I aren't privy to that information. And so I think once we really hone in on the exact type of use and user, we'll know better the impacts. But I will say that we did an analysis, which we normally don't do, but with this redevelopment plan, to see when off-site improvements would be triggered. How many more square feet would trigger off-site mitigation in terms of traffic? And I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 million square feet more that would trigger the need for those things. So I don't anticipate us getting there, but if continuing to go back, like I said, I think it's going to be tenant-driven. I think we'll pay for our fair share. If anything that we do triggers that, we will pay for our fair share. That's the law, and that's what we'll agree to do.
Okay. I'm just thinking, because the traffic studies, just for the benefit of the audience, the traffic studies do not project out for 20 years, correct? Just for the benefit of the
Right.
audience? Okay.
And that's why we did the analysis during the redevelopment plan phase, so that we would know what we're responsible for, or what would our full build-out really drive that, or would it be the surrounding area, the full build-out of that surrounding area, how much build-out? And so I think we were all comfortable that we were within a safe range, that this project, no matter how intense it might be, it would take another 1 million square feet of development before those things would be triggered. And we don't think that we're going to be triggering those. So down the road, if other users come in, that would be their obligation. For us, it doesn't really trigger that. And we can have our traffic engineer answer that question, so we have some expert testimony on it. But
Mr. Maselli, you referenced the fact that there are triggers and fair share obligations. Is that in the redevelopers agreement?
I think it's probably in some general language that we will make our fair share contributions to any off-site obligations. I'd have to double check, but I think that's the law anyway. So if our project triggers that, we will agree to that, but I don't think we will at any point. But again, if we come in with an amended approval later and we have some sort of intense use that has triple the amount of trucks, and we'll analyze it at that point. But what we're planning here, what we're asking for approval for here, we can't envision that triggering any off-site. But if there's something that we do on this site that triggers it, we will pay our fair share.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners with questions? Okay. Seeing none, I will defer down to our professionals or city professionals that are with us this evening. It's hard for me to see who's where, just because we're in a straight line and I'm used to being in a bit of a curve. So we'll just start down the end on my far right and work our way through to our other end. So Ms. Mack, questions?
You're so far down, I can't see you. Good evening. I'm Suzanne Mack. I'm the city planner. I also do a lot of the traffic work. I just wanted to comment for the board that I handled the Conrail permits. Mr. Reichel and I have been in contact with Conrail on not only this project, but several projects in the city. Have a very cooperative relationship with Conrail. They've been very helpful, and you do comply. So we're very happy that you've met all of their requirements. They're very stringent. They're very precise, and it's a complicated process. So we applaud you all for working through it. I wanted to go back to the shuttle, not to say that we know that you will put in a shuttle if you need it, because if your people can't get to work, it's going to be in your own interest. That's why we didn't make it mandatory, because we knew that there would be a cooperative relationship. But I did just want to point out to you, it's not part of the site plan, you should be availing yourself of the Hudson TMA. The Hudson Transportation Management Association is a DOT-funded, County of Hudson funded, and what happens is when new businesses come into the area, they actually set up ride sharing, which would be very helpful for you to have have the people, because you don't know where your people are going to come from work, but
Correct.
They actually set up ride matching services, and they come in for nothing. You should join them. It's nothing to join, but you should join the Hudson TMA so that you can try to round out the ability to get your employees to work. I mean, we see along the corridor of Bayonne, Jersey City, many people like walking to work because they can't get to work because there's a lack of bus service in the area. So I encourage you, as part of your overall plan, to do that. That would be very helpful for you. And you may need shuttle service in the future at some point, but that's something we will work on when we come to it. Just as Michael says that, with off-site improvements, if you meet a traffic signal warrant, you have so much traffic, we're not going to be knocking on your door. You're going to be knocking on ours, because you're going to need that access. So we have no worries about this project in terms of that. We have a cooperative relationship, and we know that you'll be working towards it. It's a very nice application.
Thank you, and I'll make sure to pass that along.
Yeah.
Lodgis is here, but I'll pass along to TMA
I'm
as
doing
well.
it with UPS and others, and so I don't think we've ever had that conversation. You should talk to them.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Hello, and thank you for reading my report. I know you guys got it pretty late, so thank you for that. You guys went item by item through everything that I asked that was outstanding, whether it was for testimony or for any conditions. And so I don't want to take up folks' time with going through that again. I do just want to confirm with Mr. Campesano in terms of, Rich, I just want to confirm with the condition for the road right-of-way dedication. I know we kind of left it a little bit, we'll work together and make sure that it would be, that it to everyone's satisfaction, but I did understand what you were saying in terms of it sprung on you guys kind of late, but how would we structure that condition are you comfortable with the language that they said in terms of structuring the condition? Are we okay there, or did we have to sort anything or work anything else out?
It's a weird way to talk to you, but
I'm sorry?
said it's a weird way to talk to you through the microphone.
Oh, yeah,
but
no, it is.
I didn't hear everything you said. Which condition are you talking about?
So this is for the dedication of the road right-of-way through the center of the property. We indicated in our report that we recommended a 66-foot wide right-of-way to go along, kind of trace Conrail's.
James, I'm familiar with what you're talking about.
Okay.
I don't think they fully agreed to it. What I think they said was that they agreed to it in principle, but the exact location is not been determined at this point, and that's for good reason, because there's other connecting properties that we have to put in there. So I'm going to just set it up that, like I said, they agreed to it in principle, and I'll make it subject to the professionals of the city to work with the applicant to determine where that should be located.
Okay.
So we'll have it in there, and then you figure out where.
Excellent. Okay. And for me, I just wanted to confirm because I wasn't sure. So thank you very much, Mr. Campuzano. And with that, again, you guys answered everything for me, so I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Down to the other end. Hello, Ms.
Thank you,
Radke.
Madam Chair. All right. A few things, and I apologize for taking up.
Microphone.
Do I
You
need to
just
press
have to
the
be
button?
close to the microphone.
Oh, okay. All right, very good. Apologize. First thing I want to talk about was phasing, and I just have questions about how Phase 1, which is the piece south of Conrail, access for Phase 1. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So there's two access points. First one is Hook Road, which we're aware of. I think the second item is the temporary access roads that we were identifying. That's really driven by remediation. Phase 1A, which is going from north to south, there's an existing ingress-egress easement in that area. So it won't be following the proposed roadway. It will follow the existing roadway, potentially with some minor modifications, just from a security standpoint. Once we're allowed to remediate that area, or depending on how the remediation pans out, we're not really sure. We have to do some additional testing. But once the remediation is occurring on that north to south roadway, we will utilize the existing maintenance road that already exists. We may have to widen it slightly just to accommodate our traffic, but it's going to be an additional point. Hook Road will continue to exist, but it will wrap in an L shape from the western portion of the site along East 22nd using our proposed curb cut. It will run south generally, and then it'll run from west to east. And then it'll connect to the Conrail crossing and enter the southern development.
Okay. Just two things about that I think we'll work through on resolution compliance. The first is we don't want Hook Road to become your primary access.
Correct.
The second is we're going to request or strongly request that you advance the remediation of the permanent road such that we don't need to rely on the interim or the access road. I'm not clear on why that remediation can't occur in the first instance, so we're going to press you on that to get that done.
And we'll be able to provide you some background data on that as well. I think it's more of an active operations as well as just a phasing standpoint.
Okay. My second comments, I'll go right to the shuttle access thing. So this is as much for the board as the board. You have the right to set a threshold for when a shuttle service could be required. We can provide you counsel on that. It might be a number of employees. It might be a monitoring program, but I'd rather that stay in the board's hands than in the decision-making of the redeveloper. So we will work with Mr. Campuzano to make some suggestions on a resolution compliance for that matter.
And
Okay.
one item that we had recommended was we would submit a report to your office as tenants come in. So that way we stay in touch with you.
Sure, yeah, we'll work with you and, and the board professionals to come up with a reasonable outcome. I just want to go back to that 7 Hook Road access. One of the reasons that, or I have two reasons that I don't want that to become the primary axis. One is it's roundabout way to get to where you need to go. Two is it's in the floodplain and vulnerable, and if you need it and you don't have it, that's problematic. And the third is it wraps around another redevelopment area we have, and we didn't, and that's my oversight, but we didn't take a close look at that approved site plan to determine if there's any conflict between their loading docks and your access. So we will do that and work with you to make sure that doesn't happen.
And we don't anticipate that being our primary.
Yeah.
In any scenario. It's
Avenue
more
Avenue
just.
J will be our preferred, that's where we want it to come.
Great. Okay, so I want to go to the we talked about traffic and the extended time frame for the redevelopment. What I'm going to suggest is that we have a condition at each application for a zoning approval. Your professional either verify the traffic impact study based upon the use that is updated or current at the time that you make the application. And then on a going forward basis that we reevaluate the traffic impact study at each request for a zoning approval for a building. And that way we can stay current on what the latest action is. Maybe there's less cars at that time. Hopefully there are, right? We're all like zooming around in space vehicles. All right. Let's see. So this is, and I'm going to address just a couple things that didn't wind up in my technical report. There's an interconnection between Bayonne Industries and your development of a driveway, as well as using the unimproved Avenue I.
Is that little stub?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to request that you give more detail there, and there may be some required improvements on Avenue I, because you show it as a security gate by others, and getting off of East 22nd onto that security gate, there's a piece of driveway that's city property that's unimproved, so we'll want to see that improved.
Is that on our site?
So it's off of our site, but I think we'll coordinate. We'll coordinate with Andy's office about the Avenue I, that little.
Okay, yeah, we'll work
portion.
with you on that.
Great, all right, so I'm going to go to this request for the right-of-way dedication. I agree with the comments made earlier on that. I would just, my opinion is it should be made obligatory, subject to an amicable resolution of where and what it is. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. In principle, we agree the final design isn't set, but once it is, we're going to work with you to make sure it works. That's the goal.
Great. Next item is access to the site, and I may have missed this part, but you have a campus, right, with private roads that are, and I have two questions. One is, will the private roads have a public access easement across them? And two is, are there any proposed security checkpoints as you enter the campus?
So from a public access standpoint, there's nothing barring them entering, but it's not encouraged, right? It's like any other driveway. It'll have a depressed curb along the frontage, but if a car turns right, we're not stopping them. The security points, there are some. One of them on Exxon South is right where we're proposing the new roadway. So we'll have to coordinate that. For the northern development, those security access points really only occur in the loading dock areas.
So, like, you have, the street grid essentially looks like an extension of the city street grid. And so if you're not familiar with that it's a campus, it's going to look like, hey, I'm driving down East 22nd,
Correct.
I can make a right, and I'm in the city grid.
Which
My question is, are you going to in any way limit that, or?
Well, we're
or
providing
not?
signage to try to clarify that, right? And that's one of the reasons that we're requesting a variance for that signage. But we're not barring someone from making a wrong turn. I think that's the statement, but we are having visual indicators through signage, through a depressed curb like a driveway would be, to try to prevent that error from occurring.
Okay. I think we're going to need some more conversation on that about whether we need, for instance, Title 39 enforcement of your road. Like, we can't have you be in a private police force, essentially. Like, I make a right off into your property and I'm lost, and like, what happens? So I think we're going to need a little more work there to figure out how we enter your campus and when.
Sure,
we have
and you
checkpoints.
can enter and exit. Nothing's like, you can make turns and turn around like if you were entering any other business or facility. You could go into the parking lot, turn around like a normal person, in any other business, right? Let's say someone makes a wrong turn into the Walmart.
Okay. All right, my next comment is on the water-dependent use, and and just for the benefit of the board, we've been, me personally as well, talking to the redeveloper over the course of, frankly, several years about this development, and one of the outcomes was that the board, the city, wanted to make sure that a water-dependent use would not be discouraged. And it's my understanding that the applicant has had conversations with water-dependent users and that the layout or the reservation of space is attractive to some users potentially, but that has, no deal's been done, but.
Correct.
Okay.
And there might be some modifications, but we tried to suit some initial conversations based on industry.
So as part of that, you have some open space within that waterfront area, open space, or pervious coverage, and I'm just curious whether you're relying on that pervious coverage. Like if a user came in and said, I need more space to operate my water-dependent use, does that throw out your bulk compliance with pervious coverage or stormwater?
From a water quality perspective, we're still below the threshold. There is some wiggle room, not much wiggle room, and I think that's why I made the statement about the roadway. That may kind of push us over. I'm not 100% certain, but we were below the threshold. If that were the case and it came at a later date, we may have to do isolated water quality to comply with DEP requirements, but I think we were also generous with the space to try to anticipate a large area.
Great. So I would encourage you to, if a water-dependent user needs more space, and you feel like you've got to come back to this board for a variance on the pervious, the coverage requirement, that you don't shy away from that, that's something I think we'd be agreeable to.
And I think one point of clarification, I was speaking very specifically to DEP's vehicular area, but on impervious coverage, we were below as well, the threshold for the site.
Great. And just for the board's knowledge, is that the redevelopment plan recognizes that this site has a lot of waterfront, but that's not an appropriate use for a waterfront, publicly accessible waterfront walkway. Therefore, the redevelopment plan, as well as the redevelopment agreement, obligate the redeveloper to provide the city with a monetary contribution to construct an off-site waterfront public access improvement. Have one last thing, which is on the issue of environmental remediation. As you probably saw in my review letter, we're concerned about, we know you're going to take care of your stuff and DEP is going to make you do it, right?
Yep.
However, you have adjoining public rights of way that could have contamination that migrated onto city property, and we want to make sure that as you encounter that, whether you're installing new sewer connections or stormwater, whatever you're doing, that you understand that that's your obligation, that like we're not going to show up and say, you strike oil in the middle of Avenue J, we're not coming to your aid. That is something that, is your, it's certainly not our responsibility, so.
No, right, yeah.
Whether it's yours or not is not
Right, and
really germane to us.
That's what I'm actually questioning, because I know that when we bought the property, itself from Exxon that we inherited their on-site remediation obligations, and I think that would fall under their obligations, but I'm trying to confirm. Did you-
Exxon, it would be
It's,
Exxon.
right, so if we hit oil, we will call Exxon. It won't be you.
I guess
We'll call you
all I'm
first
getting across
to let
is
you
that-
know, but we'll call Exxon as
Yeah.
well.
Is that the city is not going to come to your rescue as you have to install your utilities. That's going to be your problem to deal with.
Got it.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And from our consulting engineer, anything at the end there? I can't really see, so.
I'm sorry.
just
Bill is my
checking.
colleague, and actually, I'm taking all. He did all the heavy lifting, and I'm just taking all the
Taking all the
credit.
glory? Okay, so no additional questions down there?
No comments from me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at this point, this is for our members of the public, those of you who may be new to this process. You've just heard the commissioners and our professionals ask questions of Mr. Sousa's testimony. At this time, if there are any members of the audience that wish to ask questions of Mr. Sousa, please just identify yourself. Okay? And please note, as our member of the public is coming up, there is another expert coming up to testify. The same procedure will follow. At the conclusion of the witnesses, there will be an opportunity for members of the public to state their opinions, whether they be pro or con regarding this testimony. So this will be the point for questions of Mr. Sousa. And I think you just have to get really close to this microphone so our stenographer can hear you.
Okie dokie. Well, the open access that Andrew just brought up got my attention with the $1 million that's going to be going for another project. And then we have the 20-year open zoning. And I'm curious on, first, how long before, let's say, one warehouse would be up and running, just off the,
So the southern development is already with remediation efforts ongoing. Once we have our permits, we'll be constructing the southern warehouse. The big warehouse on the south side, we'll be building that second we have our permits.
Well, so I'm saying, like, let's say, how many years before one warehouse will be operating?
You'll likely have them within 2-3 years.
And for the $1 million, or for a different open space for the city, when do they get that kind of money to work with? I mean, it's not 20 years they have to wait, is it? Or, I mean, just curious.
I'm going to weigh in here, but I believe that is in the first instance, is that it's front-loaded to the first project.
Yeah, we would have to look at that, so I apologize.
Sorry, Mike. I think I have to double check the agreement, but I think I think our waterfront walkway was front-loaded. We had to put that in an escrow within a certain time of getting approval. And I think the open space contribution will be as the buildings come online. I could be wrong.
No, you're right. That's my same recollection, is that the walkway money comes in fixed fee right at the, in the first instance, and then there's another thing called recreational open space. That's associated with each building.
Right.
The contribution.
So it'll be on a percentage basis, based on the overall percentage. So if the first one is 1 million square feet, it's the percentage basis that building would have owed for that payment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Signo.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public that have a question for Mr. Sousa regarding his testimony? Sure, come on up.
Sharon Nadrowski, 126 Avenue A.
You just have to talk right
Sharon
into-
Nadrowski, 126 Avenue A. So I just want to know, what was the date of the traffic study?
The date?
The date, when was the traffic
I
study
would
done? Are we
probably
using a traffic study from 2017 or?
Probably 2-3 years ago, but I'm not certain exactly when.
2020?
This
Okay.
year.
And I heard a lot about the traffic flow on the site and the improvements that are made for the flow of traffic there. But I didn't really hear much about the impact on the trucks leaving your site on 440 to the Turnpike, to the Bayonne Bridge. We talked about the impact and what the trigger is. When those sites when your traffic study was done, we all know, I don't know how you include the already approved UPS. They're not online, so when you guys do a traffic study and you're out there, there are no UPS trucks on the road, right? Clogging 440 that I travel every morning. So all these additional ones, the additional study down there, the Seahorse, all these other things that are already approved that have, warehousing and a large number of tractor trailers coming in and out, they're all the only way you're going. And we have Global here. I know that's technically Jersey City, but that traffic sits in Bayonne. Does that all get factored in the
Yes.
flow out?
Yes, it
And
does.
those sites, so how do you project the numbers of, when you're doing your study, do they use some sort of formula to figure out what the UPS impact is, what the new Westco down on Fifth Street is, the
Yes,
Amazon and all them?
It is. So there's an ITE handbook that has a guidance for, based on uses, what the projected traffic counts would be. And there are multipliers to that based on square footages, population, employee counts. It varies. So yes, there is a basis for that. It's not just a grab at the dark.
No, okay, so there was no trigger for any improvements to 440. I'm just kind of amazed because I ride it
Correct.
every day.
440 is off-site.
I know, but you're affecting the flow there. I know, but
Based on
the
our
on and off, like right.
Based
you're
on our
coming off
study
there.
area, we didn't identify any improvements that were required.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. Any other members of the public that have a question? Okay, I don't see any other members of the public. Okay, I see your next witness approaching,
Yes.
I believe.
Do you want this back? This is dangerous in my hands. Oh, right, John, we'll need it. For my next witness, Madam Chair, I'd like to call John McDonough.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mr. McDonough.
Good evening.
We're going to get you sworn in.
I do.
Okay.
Mr. McDonough, can you present your qualifications to the board for the 2000th time this year?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is John McDonough. That's
Yeah,
spelled
we'll-
You're just going to accept them, right?
Mr. McDonough appears before this board regularly. We will accept you as an expert
Thank
witness.
you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. McDonough, did you do a zoning analysis of the site?
Yes, I did.
Can you take us through that analysis first, starting with how we qualified for the redevelopment plan for this site?
Well, okay, we'll start at the start. The redevelopment plan is predicated on a redevelopment agreement. To my understanding, that's in effect.
It's been signed, yes.
So that box can be checked off right off the bat. Then you have your usual zoning controls, and as always, Mr. Clavelli has given the board what I'll call a scorecard. On page 3, it's a page and a half of zoning criteria, and you see in the last column, and just for the record, we're in the Central Constable Hook redevelopment plan, line after line after line after line says complies, complies, complies. So we're here for relatively modest relief. You just heard through engineering testimony, it predominantly relates to the number of signs, which is to provide for navigation aids on what is really an enormous site. Keep going?
Absolutely. I'm not going to cut you off.
Okay, so again, the site is part of the vast Constable Hook area, which is fully developed with industrial uses. The essence of the plan, the heart of the plan is revitalization, and to take this centerpiece of Constable Hook, which is now a whole, if you will, in an otherwise fully developed industrial area, and revitalize it. And we have an applicant here that is ready, willing, and able to take what is now an empty site and convert it into a first-class facility that is adjacent to a world-class port. We know it's the largest port on the East Coast. The bridge has been raised. The bay has been dredged for the larger boats. This is a natural extension, a natural evolution of what's been happening there and what's intended to happen there. Again, in the interest of the burgeoning demand for logistics and e-commerce. So the applicant and the redevelopment plan respond to that, and we have an applicant here that is, again, ready, willing, and able to fully comply with the redevelopment plan goals and objectives. All of the uses comply, the building heights comply, the building coverages comply, the building setbacks on all sides comply, the parking complies, and as we've said here, the buildings will meet all your design standards as well, including meeting the LEED guidelines for environmental sustainability. That's part of this applicant's, this end user's program for their building. So again, the project will be designed to meet or exceed the point requirements, which would otherwise be required for LEED certification. The application also is going to comply in terms of not only the uses and the setbacks and the bulk on all sides, I said the LEED. The only relief is related to the number of ground signs, which, as you've heard, we've got 3 gateway signs here, which are going to demarcate the 3 entryways into the development or for the access roads. And then we've got 5 what I'll call junction signs, which are justifiable on an enormous site such as this. These are going to be located at the decision points to help drivers navigate the site. They're not advertising per se, they're visual aids, they're visual cues. They're not going to be advertising per se, but directional signs and facilitate clear and safe identification of the site and clear and safe circulation and wayfinding. In terms of not relief per se, but the applicant is also going to seek 20-year zoning protection pursuant to the MLUL. That's section 52 of the land use law. Given the sheer sizes of this project, there is a commitment to quality here. These are going to be first-class buildings that will attract first-class tenants. There's a quality aspect to that which warrants that zoning protection for 20 years as well. There are also justifications for that extension based again on the sheer size of the development. The minimum thresholds for zoning protection or extended zoning protection in the MLUL would be 10 times less than what the applicant is proposing here. So this development is 10 times larger than the minimum thresholds that would allow and enable a board to grant extended statutory protections. Extended zoning protection would enable a complex project of this scale for a phased-out development, as you just heard. The comprehensiveness of the project and coordination with many outside users will warrant the extension as well. The uncertainty of the economy, the interest rates, construction costs, all warrant extended zoning protection as well. And then the development of the site will, as you've heard, provide a mechanism to accelerate the remediation of the site, but that still will take time. The entire hook is transforming, and the project will involve coordination with many surrounding uses as well to ensure that this site, which again is at the centerpiece of the hook, integrates with everything around it. So although we're not asking for relief per se, we think the basis for that relief in the statute is there under section 52. In terms of the actual relief for the signage, the redevelopment plan does give the board authority to grant the relief, and the criteria for that relief are easily met here under the balancing test, where the benefits of the application as a whole would substantially outweigh any detriments. On the positive side, this project is going to deliver a permitted use that responds to market demand for rapid logistics distribution. A little point of clarification is there was I think a prohibition or a limitation on e-commerce. That's a very broad-based term, and our ITE categories have actually evolved. There are many subcategories of warehouse as well. One of the e-commerce categories is actually what the applicant used here in terms of traffic generation and the traffic report saying that the plan will accommodate what is, let me get the right classification for the board. It's the non-sort, it's the high cube fulfillment center non-sort, which is distinguishable from the one that I think the board members had concern over, which would be the sort type facility, which deals with the smaller packages and has high volume. So this is a much lower volume. So I just wanted to clarify the concern about e-commerce, that we're looking more at prohibiting or limiting against a high cube fulfillment center that is a sort type of facility. The project is going to improve, unify, and modernize longstanding industrial lands. The project will continue the positive transformation that is occurring in Constable Hook. The project will advance our planning goals to reinforce the Hook and the port as premier locations. The project will have an economic development, of course, in terms of providing for jobs where there are none now, services and economic development. and the site upgrades will result in overall operational efficiencies to support what our Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, the CDC, all classify as quote-unquote critical infrastructure. All of this comes back to the land use law and promoting fundamental purposes, including Purpose A, the promotion of the general welfare, Purpose G, to provide for a variety of uses in appropriate locations according to the needs of all New Jersey citizens. This is not only going to improve the site functionally, but visually as well. First-class architecture, landscaping as well, being brought into this facility will certainly improve the aesthetic appeal. That goes towards Purpose I. And then finally, Purpose M, the planning goal for efficient use of land. This is a 127-plus acre site that is a void in the center of Constable Hook that is going to be revitalized and brought back to life. In terms of potential impacts, based on all the testimony, the visuals that our engineering testimony gave you, the signage is more directional than advertising per se and promotes safe and efficient circulation. And with that, I think I hit all of my points. Clearly here, the statutory criteria for approval are met. The project will have a positive influence on the site with minimal, if any, impacts. It is going to promote the 2018 master plan, which makes many references to the importance of Constable Hook, not only to the city, but to the region at large. The project is going to promote and advance the goals and objectives of the master plan and the redevelopment plan, again pointing to both plans as emphasizing the importance of unifying and modernizing the Hook. With that, I would offer that the statutory criteria for grant of the relatively minimal and modest relief here are met, and there is clearly heavy weight here on the positive side, and in that regard, approval is warranted.
Mr. McDonough, just to circle back on LEED, would we be willing to submit some sort of LEED worksheet as a condition of approval to show compliance?
Yes, we certainly will.
You also mentioned environmental remediation. Is that another goal that, is that folded into I, or is that a separate statutory purpose?
There is a separate statutory purpose for environmental remediation as well.
And that is also a benefit
Yes,
to the public, correct?
A major benefit here.
In your opinion, with regard to that lighting design exception, do you think we need that based on the testimony given about the Homeland Security lighting levels?
There was a qualifier in the redevelopment plan that relief would be needed unless it was necessary for Homeland Security. And I think you have stipulation on the record that that does tie back to the Homeland Security guidelines.
If we do need it, do we meet the standard for a design
I
exception?
think the board can turn to that relief in terms of the surrounding context. We've got the port there and the lights that go with it. We're in the center of the Hook, not the edge of the Hook, remote from residential, and certainly will not cause objectionable glare or light trespass onto residential properties.
I think that'll do it for Mr. McDonough from my perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. McDonough?
One quick one?
Sure.
And if I project, can I not use my mic? Oh, I need, okay. I gotcha. Just a quickie. Both witnesses have mentioned LEED certification. Are they envisioning LEED silver, LEED gold? Do you have an idea, or at this point, you
I don't
can't?
want to overcommit my client. At this point, I know they'll reach LEED certification. There'll be a variety of ways to get there: energy conservation, indoor air quality, recyclable materials, the usual list, and the list will be provided. My sense is it would make its way up to silver, but I don't want to commit my client.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners? Okay, then I'll move down the end. I believe Ms. Mack is down the end there. You're okay? And then we'll work our way over?
I have no questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Reichel?
Just some commentary, which is applicants seeking extended zoning protection or is entitled to it. I would just, as a comment, say that things will change over time for us as well, so we'd like to see flexibility and responsiveness as things do change. Your plans may change, and our plans may change. So we need to work together to make this done right over a 20-year period.
Understood.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else? So hard to see.
Yes.
Okay. At this point, are there any members of the public that have a question for Mr. McDonough regarding his testimony? Okay. At this point, we will open it up to members of the public if you wish to make a statement regarding this application. Now would be the time, whether it be pro or con. Does anyone wish to come forward and make a statement regarding the application? Okay, I see a lot of shaking of heads no. Okay, so at this point, we will let Mr. Maselli close.
Thank you,
And
Madam
then we will
Chair.
comment. Thank you, Mr. Maselli.
The site plan itself is fully compliant. This is what we were looking for when we did this redevelopment plan, both my client and the city. It's, like I said, John used the right word, it's an evolution in the use of formerly industrial properties. This is our future, and it's the first step down in the Constable Hook area. We're gonna probably see a lot more of this or something like it over the next few years, but it's exciting to take that first step, and it shows Bayonne has reached, we're beyond just residential redevelopment now. I mean, I know we've got some other sites that have been approved, but it's nice to see the ball still rolling. So, as I said, the site plan itself is fully conforming. The signage, I think, speaks for itself. I think it's better in that area to have more signs, and then it won't really affect the neighborhood. So I would ask that the board approve this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Maselli. I would just like to make a few points before we move to any sort of motion or vote. We did hear from our board professionals regarding some of the items that would be beneficial for us as board members to discuss and ensure that they are a condition, so to speak, if this should be favorably approved. One of the items we discussed was the shuttle, and I do believe that shuttle should be in there. We're really trying to be transit-oriented in everything that we do, and factories are a great development for the city. However, factories, well, I shouldn't say factories, I apologize, warehouses, I'm misspeaking, it's been a long evening. Warehouses are a wonderful addition because they do bring jobs for those that work there. However, we know that traditionally having some warehouses that are far from the common roadways, a shuttle would really be beneficial to encourage light rail usage, et cetera. So I would like to see that shuttle component as a part of the condition. Additionally, the traffic, we heard questions from commissioners, we heard questions from our members of the public, and in looking at the traffic report, I do agree with, I don't want to misspeak or misquote Mr. Reichel, but I do think we have to be flexible. I think to just say that 20 years from now we know exactly what traffic will look like in Bayonne would be wonderful if I had a crystal ball, but I know I do not have one. If I did, I would have won the Powerball the other night. In any event, I think we need to work with our city professionals and come back with traffic reports before the phasing. I really think that's important because looking at some of the dates in the traffic report, I think things have changed. And while I know there was testimony regarding this not being the e-commerce possibility, we also heard testimony that said we don't really know who the tenants are yet. So while it would be highly encouraged that it was not e-commerce, it doesn't seem that that's a guarantee. So I would highly encourage that if this were to be favorably approved, that we do include language regarding coming back and working with our officials with revised traffic reports. Commissioners, any other commissioners that wish to comment? Sure. Commissioner Lack?
Hello? Hello?
You just need to hold the mic very close.
Is this good?
Like you're singing at the concert.
I think I can hear myself. It's
Okay,
good. All right.
wonderful.
What's it called? I wanted to say that I like the project. I like the idea. I like the rendering that was proposed. I think it's very modern and it's a good aesthetic. And I think a project of this scope and of this, I guess, magnitude could be very incentivizing to other principals, assuming that it's executed well and it's executed with all the future, how do you say, compliance issues taken into consideration. I think if it's executed accordingly, that it could incentivize others to really come in and follow suit, and eventually what that may look like and what that may actualize into is a more refurbished and revitalized area and down by that Constable Hook area. So I think it's a good project and good idea. Hopefully it's executed well, and I wish you guys the best of luck.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Lack. Any comments down the other end from our commissioners? Okay, no comments down there. So at this point, I would be seeking a motion to approve, and we may just want to clarify some of the items that we are including, so I'm going to pass this over.
Yes, Madam Chair. We talked about the traffic issues, so we're going to, okay, better? We talked about the traffic issues, so we need to include some language with regard to fair share obligation, as well as the shuttle, and so those will be conditions of approval, as well as the outer roadway, which Mr. Reichel discussed. That is, has to be included as a definitive obligation of the applicant, even though we don't know where it's going to be located. So those items would be conditions of approval, as well as anything else that was discussed by the commissioners during the course of the hearing, as well as what the applicant agreed to do.
Thank you for clarifying for the record. So at this point, I will seek a motion to approve based on what Mr. Campusano
I'll
just
move it.
said. Thank you. I'll second. And on the vote? Oh, sorry.
On the vote, Chairperson Fiamonte. Aye. Commissioner Veloz.
Aye.
Commissioner Booker. Commissioner Mayorano.
Aye.
Commissioner Barrow. Aye. Commissioner Locke.
Aye.
The application has been approved.
Okay, thank you. At this point, we're going to take a short 5-minute break, and then we will reconvene for our next application.
Chairperson Fiamonte? Commissioner Veloz?
Here.
Commissioner Booker?
Here.
Commissioner Mayorano?
Here.
Commissioner Barrow?
Here.
Commissioner Locke?
Here.
Quorum present.
Okay, thank you, but I think you need the microphone back.
That was a waste. Item number 8, P-23-020, Bayview JV LLC, Larkin Associates, site former A&P property, block 300.01, lots 1, 2, and 3, block 301.03, lots 1.02, 2, and 3, block 511, lot 1. Applicant is seeking amended approval to the former application P-21-017 for amended preliminary and final site plan approval, site plan involving modifications of the initial approval and amended subdivision where lot lines will be relocated and variance relief is being sought for rear yard setback and a second curb cut measuring 22 feet. Mr. Maselli?
Thank you. My name is Michael Maselli. I represent the applicant Bayview JV LLC in connection with this application. Yes, it is the former A&P site. Most people have probably been down there. It's where the Planet Fitness is. There was an approval on this site 2 years ago now. It feels like that went by pretty quickly. 2 years ago. So some of you might have been on the board at the time and have seen this. Some of you may not. It is a multifamily redevelopment that was approved. We got preliminary approval on the entire site. And final approval on most of it. There's one building that we held back on final approval. This is for 1,100 units, about 55,000 square feet of retail space. There are some changes we made to that site plan. They're not major. They occur along Avenue A corridor on the waterfront and the B4 building. Significantly, when we were here before, we had 2 options for the new intersection we're creating at Avenue A. We had a traffic signal and a non-traffic signal option last time. We have gone with the traffic signal for good now, and we've worked that out with the city and the Port Authority we're working with to make sure that that signal is the best option, and it is. So that's what we're proposing. We're also proposing just some minor changes to the waterfront pier. We have our DEP approval for a waterfront development permit. So the shape of the waterfront pier changed a little bit, nothing major. We have some minor changes to building B4. And so what we need, in connection with the access point on Avenue A, we had an adjacent neighbor where the Dollar Tree is. There's a driveway, the northerly access drive that we're closing up, because that access drive would have been right next to the new roadway. So what we did was we closed that up, and you'll see that there's a minor subdivision where we're swapping some land to allow for the roadway to be, for their site to connect out onto our roadway, so that it's not coming out where our roadway's really close to their driveway. Now it's all interconnected, and I think it functions much better, and I think it's going to be a better site for it. So without further ado, I'd like to call our first witness, but first I'd like to move all of our exhibits into evidence. They are exhibits A1 through, Alicia, what were we up to on this one? 30-something? Wow, 43.
Okay, we'll accept those into evidence.
Thank you.
And how many, Mr. Maselli, how many witnesses do you have?
So we have our project engineer, who will do the bulk of the testimony. We have our architect, who will go through just the changes to building B4, and then John McDonough.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Maselli.
We will
You
keep
may
it-
proceed with
Yeah, we'll
your-
keep it moving as much as we possibly can.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening. Yes, I do. Sure, my name is Matthew Newells, N-E-U-L-S.
Just before I proceed, as a matter of housekeeping, I just want to make sure the record reflects the applicant is actually just Bayview JV LLC. We put the care of Larkin Associates because we couldn't squeeze it in the application. That's not the actual name of the entity. That was our fault for putting it up there, but we tried to squeeze. So that's one. And number 2 is the minor subdivision that we're seeking approval for. We included Lot 2. That's Block 301.03, Lot 2. We had included that in the application. It is not necessary. All the land being swapped back and forth is between Lots 3 and Lot 1.02. So for the record, Lot 2 is not part of the subdivision. We submitted some correspondence to that effect, and Mr. Newells will provide testimony to that effect. That being said, Mr. Newells, can you present your qualifications to the board?
Sure. I have a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I've been licensed since 2001. Bachelor of Science degree in Civil and Environmental Engineering from Lafayette College.
Yeah, Mr. Newells, it's very hard to hear you.
Oh,
If you
I'm
could just-
sorry. Oh, yeah, there you go. I hear it now.
Yeah, why don't
Yeah.
you,
Yeah, you
take,
can-
can you take it out of there? It's wireless, right?
It is. If you just slide it towards you, it should come out. Just don't press the bottom.
Uh-oh.
There's a button there.
I think it'll
Well,
be
they
better.
don't
Yeah,
break
you
it.
have
That's
it
probably a little
close.
better. All
There you
right. So I'm not sure what you heard. I was licensed professional engineer since 2001, and I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Civil and Environmental Engineering from Lafayette College. And about 27 years of experience, and testified before numerous land use boards throughout the state of New Jersey.
All your licensing in good standing everywhere?
Yes, it is.
Including New Jersey? All right, thank you.
We'll accept Mr. Newells as an expert witness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Newells, can you quickly orient the board to the site?
Sure. Is it possible to, I think it's A31 is the amended final subdivision site plan. Sorry, it's a big file. It's gonna take a minute to open. I'll start from just the cover sheet on that, there you go, that's fine, just like that. So you can see the little map in the upper left corner, upper left part of the sheet there, where it's highlighted in red. But the site is basically, as Mr. Maselli indicated, it was the former home of the A&P Supermarket Retail Center, located on the west side of Avenue A, approximately across from where the exit ramp from 440 southbound enters the roadway there. So that's, I guess, a good location of the site. It has frontage on the Newark Bay as well on the left side of the site.
Thank you. Can you just quickly run through the approvals that we got in a 30,000-foot view? The subdivision approval that we obtained last time we were here?
Sure. Could you advance to the second sheet, please? With regard to the subdivision. Uh-oh. I'm sorry, maybe the third sheet. There we go. Okay, so this is a zoomed-in area. This is a subdivision plat that's part of our set of drawings that was submitted, and this is really a zoomed-in view of sort of Avenue A, as well as the right across on the right side. You can actually see kind of drawn in there as the exit ramp coming off of Route 440 southbound. And so what's happened is there is the Lot 3 portion, the sort of pie-shaped piece on the north side, is part of the Bayview site that we had received the approval for in 2021. But down below, you see a rectangular building, and that property, which is Lot 1.02, is the existing retail center to the south of a piece of the Bayview site. So what we've done here is we've shaded in a gray area, and that's the proposed area that's to be taken from the Bayview site that was approved previously and appended to the Lot 1.02 site. And that does a couple things. It helps to smooth out the property lines, so they're more regular. They're not quite 90-degree angles, but you get a better angle in the back of the property. It does provide access to the back of that retail building for the owners to be able to access the building, because previously the lot line was right on the edge of the building wall. And it also helps to make that not as isolated as it would have been. It would have almost become landlocked with the proposed driveway shown. So those are really the reasons for the subdivision there.
Just stepping back for a minute, though, last year we were approved for a preliminary final major subdivision on the actual A&P lots. Was that to create 5 development lots and 3 publicly accessible common lots?
That's correct.
That has not been perfected yet, correct?
That has not been perfected yet.
But that's not the subject of this application. We're not changing that
Correct. The
subdivision at all.
subdivision is just relating to these 2 properties on the right side of the railroad.
Okay.
Whereas the prior subdivision was wholly on the left side of the railroad.
And did we previously receive preliminary final major site plan approval on buildings 2, 3, and 5 for this site?
Yes.
And We also received site plan approval for 30,848 square feet of non-residential floor area. And that included the fitness center, correct?
Yes.
We got preliminary approval on building 4, correct?
That's correct.
And that was for how many units? Is it
That's-
303? Is that
Yeah,
ring a bell?
correct, yep. So, that's correct. Actually, could you please advance to the very next slide? That would be helpful. It's
And
kind of
Mr.
an
Newell,
overview.
I believe you do have the laser pointer if you wish to use
Oh,
it
yeah.
for the benefit of the
A laser
audience.
pointer right there?
Oh, that's helpful.
Yeah.
I know for the benefit of the audience, it may help because sometimes it's hard to see.
All right. Thank you.
Next.
The next slide, please.
Yep.
There we go. That's the overall site, right?
So
So,
you just quickly, in a summary fashion, go through what was approved and what we're seeking approval for.
yes. There it goes. It takes just a minute. There we go. Okay. So you were just mentioning building B4, which is this building here in the lower left-hand corner, southwestern portion of the site. That's the building that was had a preliminary approval previously and is seeking final on that tonight. So we can move on to just going through.
Yeah, let's just go
I'll just
through
move
what
through
we're
quickly.
proposing, the changes. So this was the approved site plan.
Yeah.
What changes are we proposing in
So-
tonight's application?
Yeah, so one of the things that changes is the shape of this pier back here. This pier is required to be, I think, 1,600 square feet. I think we have roughly 1,700 square feet, which is a good in size. We did go through the approvals with the New Jersey DEP for the waterfront development permit, which included that pier as well as the Army Corps of Engineers. And that's what's resulted in the shape of it being a different shape than we had before. It does meet the DEP's rules as far as width and limiting shading of the water. And we also shaped it to avoid some of these existing structures that are there. Those are former bridge piers. So we do have the pier more than 1,600 square feet in size, and that is one of the thresholds for the bonus that we'll get to later in the presentation. Additionally, we are showing the post-site driveway. Was shown before, but that's since been, we've gotten approval from Conrail in order to be able to do that, so that's shown in this location as well. And those are the main changes. I can go a little further down in terms of some of the threshold criteria and such. So one of the things that has come up and been sort of resolved since the last time we were here was that we will be proposing a traffic signal that's being worked on currently, and that would be jointly reviewed by the City of Bayonne as well as the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, because the Port Authority has jurisdiction of Route 440 and the ramp there. So that's being worked on currently, and that's of course at this intersection where I'm pointing. There. One of the other things that is a little harder to see on this particular slide, but I'll still point to it because of the location. We spoke about on the subdivision. That's happening here, this adjacent retail property to the south of the proposed driveway. That used to have or currently has a driveway onto Avenue A right about there, which is just south of the new intersection. And so in order to smooth out the operations of traffic in that area, we're actually proposing to close off that driveway, proposing a new driveway from that parking lot onto our existing driveway so that people exiting from the retail center can take advantage of the fact that there'll be a signal here, much safer and better way to access Avenue A. And you're eliminating this, which might have been a potential conflict of traffic, having a driveway just south of the intersection. So that was one of the changes. The other things are the same. The other things that we talked about, I already touched upon the modification to the pier design, and we did some modifications as required by the resolution of approval in 2021. One of the things that we did is we were able to modify the design of Building 3, right under this label. Unfortunately, there's a projection of that building. And we were able to pull it further back from the property line. Originally, it was at 31 feet, and it's a request of one of the neighbors And the board previously were able to pull that back to 40 feet to increase the size of the buffer in that area between that and between that building and the existing neighborhood to the north. We were able to eliminate some issues having to do with lighting. One of those in particular had to do with lighting along this walkway coming down toward West Fifth Street. So we were able to eliminate that issue, increase the number of bike spaces, and increase sidewalk widths in different areas of the site. So I think that addresses those items. There are some minor changes to building B4, which will be addressed by the project architect after my testimony is complete. Again, B4 being that southwesterly building on the lower right-hand side of the page. There was, I'm not sure if it made it to the list. I did want to just point out that there is an access route coming from the neighboring property to the south. In this location here along the waterfront walkway, there is a route that would take you from that site, from the waterfront walkway, up through the property, across this way, through our triangular shaped park in the middle of the site, and be able to have access all the way out to Avenue Way. And I just wanted to point that out here for ease of reference to those in attendance tonight. There weren't any changes to the overall amount of parking on the site. I think that's pretty much remaining the same. As far as overall parking numbers and EV parking, again, I think we're providing at least the minimums required in the redevelopment plan, which was one space for every 30 spaces within the redevelopment plan area. We are providing the required amount of parking for the open space that's specifically dedicated to the open space throughout the site. I think that's a quick overview of the changes. I don't know if you have any other questions you'd like me to.
In terms of the phasing of some of these improvements, did we submit an amended phasing plan with this application?
Yeah.
Can you take the board through that very quickly?
Sure. I'm not sure if there's a phasing plan in this set or if it was a different exhibit. Just 1 second to take a quick look.
28.
Yeah, I think the phasing plan may have been a different.
25, A25, Alicia.
25, there you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
There you go. Thank you very much. Okay, so basically the way the phasing is proposed as we sit today is that the red shading is phase one, so that's the first, obviously the first phase of improvements that would be built. Importantly, that includes the waterfront open space, which is about 103,000 square feet of uplands or land above the water. There's also areas in the water that are included, and that's all the way to the left on the page. It includes the building B4, which is the lower right-hand building. That's also in phase one, as well as the main road coming in from Avenue A, railroad crossing, including also the triangular shaped park in front of the blue building. Everything shaded in red will be included in phase one. Right now, phase two is the lower right-hand building, which we call B5 in our plans. That's phase two. 3 is the upper left, which is the green building, and then phase 4 is the area around the fitness center to remain, as well as building 2, shaded in orange on the screen above. And again, just wanted to try and highlight that pathway again, would be available from the waterfront, winding its way through the site to the triangular park and out to Avenue Way. There would be a consistent route throughout the site.
We have that route marked on the exhibit that we submitted before that we have to mark in as A44, Alicia. It's the electronic exhibit that we emailed to you. Oh, okay. Okay, well, it's in the area that you just referenced, right? The proposed.
Correct. Yeah, it was just there's a walkway connecting everything from.
And that will be in the first phase, correct? That will be
completely in the first phase.
Subject to safety standards and good common sense that you're not going to put pedestrians in harm's way during construction, right?
Correct.
And in terms of the overall phasing plan, we're committing to this plan in a very flexible way. Our redevelopment agreement doesn't really pin us in on this phasing, correct?
That's correct,
And
right.
what we can commit to do is provide the improvements that are shown in Phase 1, the public improvements, the roadways, the waterfront walkways, the parking. We'll do that all in Phase 1 to the extent it doesn't create a safety danger or some sort of detrimental impact for the construction, correct?
That's correct, right. And that also was shown during my previous presentation too, in terms of fire truck circulation, safety, emergency vehicles and such. They're all included in that Phase 1 development.
Okay. We are getting 1,100 units in this project, correct?
Correct.
And that's pursuant to a density bonus, correct? That we're allowed 875 in a base amount, but we get a density bonus for certain improvements. Can you just go through the requirements that we had to meet to get those additional units?
Sure. So let me just get to those. Oops. What do you do with those? Okay. So I know,
I think we have it listed on 4.
let's go proceed. So in terms of the.
Page 4 of our guide.
I'm sorry?
Page 4 of our guide should have all of it
Page
listed
4.
out.
I looked right over it 5 times. I'm sorry. Here we go. I looked right over it. The second boulevard entrance provided to Avenue A is the first item. And again, that was going back to the plans that were on the screen. That's the main entrance that we were talking about. So that is provided as proposed as well. We've gotten the approval from Conrail to cross the tracks that made that possible since our last hearing. So that's one of the items that's required. Number 2 is additional parking spaces at the ratio of 1 per 750 square feet for the public space in area B and C. So that comes out to 163 spaces that's required to accommodate the open space, both the waterfront, so that covers both the waterfront open space park as well as that triangular park in the center. So that amount of space generates the need for 163 publicly available parking spaces, and those are provided throughout the site, on the surface of the site, along the sides of the roads, and on a few different lots that are scattered throughout. We had to extend an extension of the public walkway along the waterfront, a minimum of 1,200 linear feet, and basically that's off-site. And that's being handled through the redevelopers agreement in terms of a payment in lieu of that work. The construction of the waterfront pier, which I showed on the plan before, which had sort of that H-type shape to it, that's one of the elements of the pier that needs to be 1,600 square feet. The proposed pier is at 1,700 square feet, and that has now been approved by the New Jersey DEP through the waterfront development permit, as well as the Army Corps of Engineers through that application process as well. And then the final thing for the residential density bonus is the traffic improvements to Avenue A, such as traffic lights or other traffic pedestrian improvements as required by the city engineer. As I said before, we are designing a traffic signal at that intersection, and that signal will be subject to approval by the city's engineer as well as the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, as they have jurisdiction on the Route 440 ramp.
With regard to the non-residential floor area, we also get a density bonus for that, correct? And is that for the second access along Avenue A as well?
That's correct. So the base permitted area for retail is 33,460 with the bonus. The floor area of 55,000 square feet is permitted, which we are close to in what we're proposing, provided that, again, you have the second access point to Avenue A. And so we do meet the thresholds to be able to provide the 55,000 square feet of retail area.
Just to circle back very quickly, when you said we got approval from Conrail to cross those tracks, there's an actual license agreement executed between the parties, correct?
That's correct.
For that crossing?
Yep.
All right. When you mentioned the calculation for the number of spaces that are required, the 1 per 750 for the
Yes.
density bonus. Can you just discuss how we reach that calculation based on the open space that's in the area B and C? That are
Correct.
identified in the redevelopment plan? Can you just take us through how we got to that calculation? I think that was a question in the planner's report.
That's correct, yep.
Let's see, will we submit those calculations as a condition of approval?
Yes.
Let's see. You mentioned the extension of the waterfront walkway, which we're paying for. Let's go to the subdivision, the minor subdivision that we're doing.
Sure.
Block 301.03, lot 1.02 will be approximately 37,122 square feet in size when some land
That's
is
right.
dedicated from
Yep.
the other site, correct?
That's
And
right.
this will allow the driveway that's connecting to our road to be built, this land swap?
That's correct. So it allows the driveway to go through and connect to our proposed site entrance. We will close off the driveway from Avenue A to the retail building and eliminate that conflict. And it also gives access to the rear property, the rear side of the retail building to the owners. Will have access to that building then as well.
But no additional lots are being created as
Correct.
a result of
It's
this?
just a swap from handing land from one property to the other. It's not creating any new lots.
That subdivision creates a couple of variances, correct?
That's right.
One for a rear yard setback, but does that improve on existing conditions?
It improves on the existing conditions. Currently, it's 0, and I think we provide a minimum of 10. I don't have it in front of me, but I think it's providing a minimum of 10 feet now, so
So it brings us to a closer conformance to the zoning
closer to
ordinance, correct?
conformance than we previously were.
There's also a deviation for the subdivision lines that we're creating not being at perfect right angles. Is that an improvement on the current condition as well?
Yes, there is an improvement there because the angle that's created by the lot is closer to a right angle. Still not quite a right angle, but not as wide as the existing angle between the two lines.
Is there any harm in not having the right angle, or is that more of a paper exercise than anything else?
Not in this case, because really the railroad is right adjacent to the site, and it's just adding some land to the existing lot, so it really doesn't create, that line is not going to touch any other properties or create any other issues for anybody.
Okay, let's turn to the Dollar Tree lot. We have to amend the site plan approval for that lot, right? What changes are we making to that lot besides the connection to our roadway? What other changes are we making? Are we closing the northerly access point?
Yes, yeah, we're closing the roadway access point today. We're actually adding 2 parking spaces because we're using the space where the driveway was to add 2 parking spaces to the lot. I think it raises them from 44 to 46 parking spaces on their site.
And that's more than compliant, right?
That's
40 is
more than-
required?
More than what's needed, yeah.
Are there any variances associated with the proposed conditions on that lot?
No, I don't think.
Is there a variance for driveway width?
There is a right, so the driveway, the required width of the driveway is 10 feet.
And we're proposing?
And we're proposing the new driveway to be 22 feet in width to allow for the two-way traffic. But you really couldn't accomplish a two-way driveway with a 10-foot width. It would be too narrow, so it's, we're an appropriate width to have 22 feet to allow for the two-way passage of vehicles. And I believe the existing driveway was wider than 10 feet as well, so I think we're.
We also need a variance for number of driveways, correct?
Yeah.
And would it be possible to accomplish access to the site with just one driveway of 10 feet?
I think that would be very difficult.
So-
So we're proposing 2 driveways. There are 2 driveways today. We're not adding another driveway. We're taking one out and adding a new one. So, but two-way traffic through a single driveway of that width would be very difficult.
Would you agree that the proposed layout eliminates the potential conflict point between the existing northerly access and our proposed roadway?
Yes, that it does, because the existing driveway is immediately adjacent to the property line, so it would be very close to the proposed site-wide driveway for the development, and it could create traffic conflicts if it were to remain.
Now, there were prior conditions of approval, as we've said, we've been approved at this site before. Would we carry all the ones that haven't been addressed? Would we carry those through and agree to those as conditions of approval for this site rather
Yes.
than going through every single one? Outside approvals, how are we doing on those?
So we received, as I mentioned earlier, we received approval from the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection for waterfront development. which included the whole waterfront aspect of the site and the pier. That also addressed any flood hazard issues on the site. We received approval from the Army Corps of Engineers for work in the water to construct that pier. We have received our treatment works approval from the DEP for the sewage connection, as well as the approval of the Passaic Valley Sewage Commission and the City of Bayonne they endorsed the application as is required. And we received the Hudson County waiver for the prior subdivision, so that related to the subdivision of the site west of the railroad that was received as well.
Did you have an opportunity to review the report prepared by Matrix Engineering in connection with this application?
Yes.
Are there any items that we need to discuss in that report?
I'm sorry, the one from Matrix? Yes.
The one from Matrix, yeah.
Yeah, let me pull that up and tell you where. So I wanted to call the attention to page 7 of the report. 7? Oh. Page 7 of the report. So there were a couple of areas, and if I'm not sure if you can you pull the report onto the screen? It's the report from Matrix dated today. Yeah. I can read from it here. Actually, if you could put the phasing plan back up, which was A25, that might actually help. Then I can use that. Perfect, thank you. So at the top of the page, there's several bullet points, and what these are asking is there are certain areas of improvements on the site which Mr. Reichel asked to be included in phase 1. Again, phase 1, reminding everyone, is the red area here on the page. The first area that was requested is the walkway leading out to West 5th Street. And that's right here. It's actually just inside the blue area, which is phase 2. The request was that be included in phase 1, and we have no problem doing that, so we'll modify that to include that walkway. It may require a slight reconfiguration, but we'll make it work. Just want to keep it clear of the future building site, but we can do that. That's no problem. The second request that the elements of streetscape along Avenue A be included in phase 1. And so it's hard to see on this exhibit, but there is a proposed sidewalk that comes from the existing driveway at the north down to the proposed driveway here, and that's shown as part of phase 4, but we will modify that to include that in phase 1 as requested. The third point here is that the construction access area within the waterfront open space that's in phase 3 should be included in phase 1, at least as a temporary basis. And what that's referring to is this is a rectangle here on the left side of the green phase 3 building, and that's part of the waterfront open space. We left that as a separate phase to allow for construction of that building. But we're happy to include that as, at least on a temporary basis, and build that out, like I said, on a temporary basis as part of the rest of phase 1. So that's no problem. We can make that change. Providing that at some point there will be, some area needed to help build the building on that lot, whenever that happens. So that's fine. One of the other requests was that we provide some testimony with respect to the disposition of phase 4, specifically how phase 4 will remain operational while other phases are under construction. So what's important about that is that the fitness club, the existing fitness club, is right here where I'm circling, located in phase 4. The intention is for that to continue to be in operation while other parts of the property are under construction or being developed as such. So while other phases are being developed, the intention is for that gym to remain operational and for people to be able to access the site through the existing driveway and use the facility. Once construction of the building in phase 4 is underway, there will be arrangements to use other parking facilities on the site to accommodate that while the phase 2 building, or the phase 4 building, which we call building 2, is under construction. And ultimately, when things are done, the parking for the fitness center will be in building B2. So it will be phased, and it will remain in operation. And the phasing plans will make sure that the people using the facility have parking and have safe access to and from the parking facilities there. Moving on, so moving on, the next condition was that if this building went out of operation or became vacant for a period of 6 months, again, I'm pointing to the existing fitness center here, that the improvements around it be constructed regardless of which phase the project was, which phase of the project was under development at that time. So if during phase 2 this became vacant for a period of time, then the applicant would need to build these improvements around it. And I think they would be amenable to that requirement as well. And the last requirement in this part of the report recommended that the buffer planting area and such to the north of phase 4, which is in orange, but it's this sliver of land that I'm pointing to, beyond the driveway and such, where there are landscape improvements proposed, that be included in the first phase. There's an exhibit in the letter that shows that, and we'd be amenable to make that change to the phasing plan as well. At the bottom of page 7 of the report, Mr. Reichel recommends that a storage facility be provided for sewage overflows due to surcharge events which occur within the sewage system, and we would agree to work with Mr. Reichel's office, the city, to determine an agreeable solution to that. It doesn't give specific criteria here in the letter, but we would be agreeable to work with the city on that solution.
Is there anything else in the report that we need to discuss, or are we okay with pretty much everything else?
I don't think there's anything else that stood out other than, other kind of items we can address and move forward with.
There was, you mentioned something about that buffer area to the north. There was a request, I believe, in Mr. Clavelli's report that asked for us to reinforce that buffer with additional plantings. Would we be okay with doing that?
Yes,
in
we
addition
are.
to putting it into phase 1?
Yes.
We'll add some plantings. We'll work with his
Yeah.
office. Okay.
So
thank you.
that again was mainly in that area in orange that was here, and I think it does play into the green area too. It's spelled out in the report though, where that area is.
Okay, I think that would, let me just make sure, circle back here. I think the planner's report asked if there's going to be any proposed fee for the on-street parking. I don't think there's any plan to do that, right?
I don't know of any plan for that.
And will we be willing to submit a security plan as part of resolution compliance for our parking areas?
I'm sorry.
A security plan for our parking areas, in other words, in our decks, to make sure that they're secure and safe?
Yes, yes, of course.
EV spaces, you mentioned we will be compliant. We agree to comply with that
Correct.
requirement.
The redevelopment plan calls for 1 space per every 30, and we've provided that. We'd provide 54 spaces, which is the calculation you get when you divide the number by
We have
30.
about 163 publicly available parking spaces being provided, correct?
Correct.
Where are those located mostly?
Those are located throughout the site, along the sides of the, I'll leave this one out, but basically they're located throughout the site in different areas. They're along the sides of this road here, they're along the sides of both sides of this road here. There's some spaces down in the lower left-hand corner here. There's ultimately, they're scattered throughout the site along the sides of the site roadways.
Okay. I think that will do it for my questioning of Mr. Knowles. If the board has any questions?
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Knowles? Okay. Commissioner Mayorano?
I do have 2 quick questions. I know my grandfather always used to say there's no such thing as a stupid question. I may prove him wrong tonight. Freight rail traffic, I should know this, and I apologize. Is there still any active freight rail traffic on that line?
I think it's very rare, from what I understand. I've never seen it, but I think there is some, but I think it's rare. I don't know.
Actually,
Like it may be
Likewise,
like never, but I don't think it's ever been closed.
There is. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And the location of the envisioned entrance to the site, is there or was there a building right there?
There is an existing, or was.
Right?
Yeah. Like a
Right
little
next to
building
the
there?
Dollar
Yeah.
Tree?
I believe so. I think there is a building
It's
there.
still there?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
like a little
obviously
building.
that's-
Yeah.
You guys now own it.
Oh, yeah, we bought that property back when Bayview purchased the,
Gotcha.
that's in Bayview. We
Yeah.
own that.
Thank you.
That's on site, yeah.
Thank you. Any other commissioners with questions? Okay, I'll start with our city professionals. Start down the end with Ms. Mack.
Hi, Mr. Knowles, how are you?
Good.
My comments are on the traffic. You're the
Ms.
handle of
Mack?
traffic?
Microphone.
My comments were on the traffic signage. Are you handling that?
I can
think you
see.
can. They're very minor. It's just Mr. Pavlich had sent a memo just commenting that he thought that there should be a couple of traffic signs on site. I'm sure that you would be agreeable to doing that.
Oh, I'm sorry, could you repeat? I know we're right here, but I have trouble hearing.
You can't hear me?
You can just
Ms.
repeat
Mack,
it.
I think you just need to come as close as possible to the microphone.
Mr. Pavlich, our traffic engineer, had commented that he thought that there should be additional traffic signs on site.
Yeah, I think we're okay with that, right? We're okay with that. Yeah, we agree.
Good.
We agree.
Yeah, that basically is, I also spoke to Conrail, Mr. Reichel and I have handled the Conrail along Avenue A, and they are satisfied that you meet all their conditions.
Okay, thank you.
You guys have answered everything in my report. I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Reichel?
Thank you.
Same. You've answered my notes, and we'll work together to get to compliance. And thank you for quick turnaround on, these guys only
Thank
got
you.
my phasing comments
No problem.
earlier today and made quick work of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, no other comments from the end? Okay, at this point, we will open it up to questions from audience members for Mr. Knowles regarding his testimony. Come on down. Okay, welcome back.
My question's in regard to the waterfront walkway and the pier changes. The pier going out, is that going to go to the railroad stanchions that are there? And are you going to be doing anything with the stanchion from
That's a
the
good-
old railroad bridge?
That's a very good question. Actually, the pier is configured to go between them. They are going to remain. And that's why that's one of the reasons the pier has the interesting shape. I'm not sure if we can put back on the screen, is that one of the drawings from the site plan package. Let me see if I can tell you which sheet. Oops. I've got it here, but. A31. A31. A31, and it will be sheet 6 of that PDF.
Was that A31?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah,
A31,
A31, and
sheet
then when you get it
6.
up, sheet 6. So I'll have the drawing up here in just a minute. And, this kind of zooms in on it, which is nice. We'll get there. I guess it's the next one down. There we go. It's that sheet, yep. Oh, it's gone. You just slide down just a little bit. It's just down the edge of the screen.
Is it
There
7?
we go. That's perfect.
I think it's 7.
So right here, you can see the pier has this sort of double T shape to it, and we've sort of bent it at. That's actually a property line right there. But these little rectangles that you see in here are the existing bridge piers. They're stone bridge piers that were there from the Central Railroad Bridge. I think it was taken down in the 1980s. But so what we've been able to do is work with the city's requirements that we build a pier of at least 1,600 square feet. But the state has requirements that you can't shade large areas of water. So we've limited it to the maximum width we could get away with shading so that we could provide enough room for people to use it and fish off it. And we then kind of wound it through in between the existing bridge piers. So I think it's a unique design that accomplishes the goals of the city while staying with the state's rules. And then we've gone ahead and got the Army Corps of Engineers approval to build that, which is what you need to build anything in the water. So we're preserving them and working between them.
Thank you. They look really good. And on that, with the piers going back and forth, will they be connecting to the walkway to the building? Because they're going to do another project with the waterfront south of the A&P. Will there be connections of that waterfront and the waterfront connecting to the boat works walkway also?
Yes. So excuse me. So the pier connects to our proposed walkway in these two locations, and then the walkway itself kind of wraps around like this, if you can see on the screen, and that's been done for the way the land slopes in that area. It gets a little steep right in here, but we wrap it around, and right here we connect to the property to the south. So we've coordinated with their design team as well to make sure we're connecting in exactly the same location, so that it's a seamless experience.
Okay. And when this is phase one, will the walkway be opened as long as it's safe while the other construction is going on, or?
Yeah, yes, yep, and that's why that was all red on the phasing plan, because the open space, both the waterfront area, which is all of this, plus that park in the middle will both be done part of phase one. They'll be kept open, again, minding safety concerns, but it'll be kept open during the rest of the development.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions from the public? We'll find out.
You did talk about traffic studies, and I know Mr. McDonough's company was part of the traffic study, but he's not here. But so I have questions about the traffic study. So as somebody who lives right there, I understand the impact of traffic, and we came on Amazon. The traffic study that is on the agenda or on the website was done May 25th, 2021. May 25th, it was the Tuesday before Memorial Day weekend, probably not the best traffic day. Heavy holiday time and vacation time. Also, it was also during the pandemic, so it's really not accurate of what's going on today. But it was, I would look through them all. What number was that? That's A22. I'm talking about A22, Exhibit A22. It was May 25th at the date of the, okay, but, all right, so anyway, and again, it was Amazon opened in the week of October 22nd, 2020. This was, that date was like 6 months later. The Amazon was not fully up and running. Since then, we have approved 325 stories that have already just been approved in the last year for the CAS cam right up between 3rd and 4th Street on Avenue A. And they have a 16-story approval, which is by right on the west side of 2nd Street and Avenue A, between 2nd and 3rd, the other side of CAS cam. So I'm not sure that these numbers were brought into consideration when we talked about that. We also had, there used to be Apex was the other trucking company, warehouse company that was on the south side of the Best Food site, opposite of Amazon. That site is now a new company who moved in there in the last 3 months, Westco. don't know how they, if they have approval, or maybe I wasn't paying attention, but there's a lot more, they do a lot more traffic and trucks there. They also have a lot more workers there in the front, only because I walk there. They have a lot more workers in parking in front. So my point is just that there's a lot more traffic, and I understand we're going to do some traffic improvements, and I just need some clarification on the light also, because I actually walk back there every day. I do. I walk to First Street in the morning, and at lunchtime I walk around the back of that AMP, and trying to cross Avenue A is like Frogger. It is literally just a speed thing, and you have to try to run across the street. And the foot traffic there with the gold mine of the dollar store, that is like the hottest store in Bayonne. Everyone goes there, and there's a ton of traffic going in there. So I think from what I saw, it looked like the new traffic light is proposed for basically when you're where the fur balls or the ceramic place or the nipple factory, which what that building used to be that's there, which was owned by Senator Dugan until recently. I think that's where you're talking about that new traffic light being?
We're going to get our traffic expert up. We're going to swear him in and have him answer all these questions so
okay.
that you can not have to wait for us to testify to it. So, Mr.
Sure.
Troutman,
Okay.
with your permission, Madam Chair, is that all right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we just
Thank
have
you.
to get him sworn in.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I do. My name is Jay Troutman, Troutman. I did the original traffic study that you referenced, dated from May. The date of the report is May 25th, 2021. That is not the date of the traffic survey. So, yes, the date of the
What
report
was
is
the
around
date?
Memorial Day, but the traffic counts were taken pre-pandemic
What
from
date?
that report.
What-
They were taken in the first quarter of 2020 before the pandemic.
2020. Okay.
And then the second thing that happened was there have been several traffic studies done in this area for all of the warehouses you're talking about, for the movie studios that came before this board. So there have since been many, many updates on the traffic data post-pandemic. So we did a second document that's part of the exhibit list, an update dated April 13, 2023, that takes all of those warehouses which were in place, plus the projected movie studio traffic. And when you put all that traffic together, you end up with the traffic signal. That's what required the traffic signal that we're telling the board we're going to build now. When you put it all in there, that triggers the traffic signal, which will include pedestrian signal indications to get pedestrians across Avenue A.
Oh, I was going to request that, actually. Okay, that's good to know. Is there also, I don't know, the traffic study, that's great for the people who want to up that way, but they're also between then, so that's 5th Street. Well, it's really like 6th Street, kind of 7th Street where that light's going to be. Then you go from there all the way 7 blocks long to First Street without any other traffic controls, no stop signs, no other pedestrian ability to cross the street. Because me, personally, I do cross that way, but when I go south, there's no way to cross the street safely if you're going the other direction. And the traffic coming out of there is not only going to be going north, right? It's going to be going south. You're coming out on 5th Street. I think that's where your second, is that where the second exit is? We require 2 exits. Is it the one that's there? Is there going to be an exit from this development onto 5th Street?
No.
No. So they're just going to be right next to each other, the existing one and the one where the Furball place is the building. That's what was the last business there, sorry. So they're just the 2 exits. They're only going to be like 70 feet from each other.
No, they're quite a distance from each other. There's the existing Planet Fitness driveway that's north of the railroad bridge.
Yeah.
That would be number 1. And then the second would be the new boulevard next to the Dollar Tree.
Yeah,
So it's
okay.
that
So not
separation.
that
That's
far.
several hundred feet.
Okay. All right. So, okay, that's the traffic. So there isn't a possibility of a stop sign along there somewhere else for,
Not
like,
as
like
part-
Bayview or somewhere?
Not as part of this application.
Okay, okay. That's all, I think, you know, I know you did say you took all that all into consideration, but there was also the other, I didn't hear you mention the CAS-CAM improvements of residentials. That's another, you know, 1,000 units coming on Avenue A. I guess that'll be theirs. That'll be their issue, right? Because they're the one that affords it. Okay, then I think I'm good with traffic. All right, I have a question though about units. Is that for here? Okay, that's
Okay.
it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to say, there was 2 ladies here that live there, and they had questions, and I was going to ask it, but there was about the buffer for the north behind it. So they're very happy that you are going to do that in phase 1 and add the extra trees.
Thank you. And just for the record, that updated traffic report was A21, I believe. Okay.
That's right.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
That, oh, okay, I'm
No,
sorry.
22. So 22 was the first one, and then we did one recently in 2023 because we knew we had to update it. So 20, that goes to 21.
Okay. Yes, we just have to continue with Mr.
Questions
Newell's.
for Mr. Newell's,
Yes.
right, yes.
Okay. So are there any other members of the public that have questions for Mr. Newell's? Okay.
That's it?
Seeing
Okay.
none.
I would like to call our next witness, our project architect, Stuart Johnson. Trying.
Yes, I do. Sure. My name is Stuart Johnson, S-T-U-A-R-T, last name Johnson, J-O-H-N-S-O-N.
Have to lift the microphone a little, Mr. Johnson.
Mr. Johnson, can you present your qualifications to the board?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I am a licensed architect with a current, or I'm a registered architect with a current New Jersey license. I have a bachelor's of architecture from Syracuse University. I've appeared before approximately 30 municipalities across the state, as well as the great city of Bayonne before, and qualified as an expert in architecture.
Okay. We accept him as an expert witness. Welcome, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
Mr. Johnson, can you just take us through the changes to building B4 that's shown on the site plan?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I believe I'm going to have 2 exhibits this evening, but if we could call up the architectural site plan submission. I'm going to make reference to, I believe, the first 2 pages within that submission set.
Do we know what number that is?
Maybe A29, amended preliminary final site plan.
Can't see with or without them.
Yes. So this is a multi-page PDF. This is exactly what was submitted to the city and to the board. I'm going to make reference here to the cover sheet and specifically the illustrative perspective rendering. This is a view looking east. So again, as noted, I have 2 exhibits this evening. As our engineer and the attorney shared, the application previously received a preliminary site plan approvals for the entirety of the project, as well as final site plan approvals for each of the respective buildings and lots, except for building B4, lot 3.04. So I'm here this evening to speak about the architectural revisions and changes to the building, which are really minor. The building substantially is very similar to that which was previously approved. What we see here is an illustrative perspective view. This is the same perspective rendering that was shared with the board back in 2021. It depicts a mixed-use 12-story building with ground floor commercial retail space that activates the public realm. The building as shown there is a well-articulated building which creates various setbacks and stepbacks. The building is oriented towards the waterfront as required in the redevelopment plan. The exterior architecture of the building fully complies with the design requirements and design standards found within the redevelopment plan. The massing of the building, the percentage of exterior building materials that can be seen and found on the building match that which was previously approved. The exterior building materials consist of vertical fiber cement siding panels, composite metal panels, composite wood panels being used for accent, We have glass and aluminum railing systems, which are being used at the various balconies and setbacks along the building. We also have architectural canopies that can be found at the ground floor, at the commercial lobby entrances, and the residential lobby entrance. But again, all those building materials, their colors and makeup match that which was previously approved by this board. So building B4, again, is a 12-story building. It's a mixed-use building. It's comprised of 303 residential apartment units. That's the same density which was previously approved. We have 4,566 square feet of ground floor commercial retail space. With the next exhibit, I'll share some updates. We've shifted where the ground floor retail is located on the ground floor of the building. But that represents 214 less square feet from the prior approval. We have 7,542 square feet of ground floor commercial restaurant space, which is generally located in the same corner of the building. It's in the bottom left-hand corner of the building, which provides for outdoor seasonal cafe dining, which is a suggestion and a requirement within the redevelopment plan, and provides views of the new waterfront promenade. We also have approximately 11,067 square feet of commercial restaurant space that can be found at the 12th floor of the building, which provides for indoor and outdoor dining terraces, again, offering views of the new waterfront. That's approximately 1,492 square feet greater than the prior plan. We've had an opportunity to reflect upon the layout and the programming of that space and scaled back some of the outdoor dining terrace space adjacent to that. Lastly, we have 406 internal structured parking spaces within the building. Previously, we had 396, so we have 10 additional parking spaces. The project more than complies with the parking required per the redevelopment plan. Per the redevelopment plan, we require 361 spaces. So again, we comply with that. Mr. Newells had noted that we are compliant with the number of EV parking spaces respective to the redevelopment plan. The application received site plan approvals, preliminary site plan approvals prior to the state's new EV model ordinance. However, the building as designed does provide for 15% EV parking. So we do intend to provide parking in a similar manner to that which is required by the state. We have 55 EV parking spaces specifically within this first building B4. In terms of the unit mix, so I noted we have 303 total residential apartment units. We have made some modifications to the unit mix breakdown throughout the building, which is really responding to market conditions and thinking about the building as we further program it and engineer it. So the updated unit mix consists of 39 studio units, so that's 21 less studio units. We have 134 one-bedroom apartment units, which is 32 less than the prior approvals. We have 122 two-bedroom units, which is 62 additional two-bedroom units from the prior approvals. And we have 8 three-bedroom market rate rental apartment units, which is 9 less than the prior approvals. So again, the overall density complies with the redevelopment plan. The unit mix complies with the redevelopment plan, and the minimum unit sizes for studios, 1, 2, and 3-bedroom apartment units all comply with that required in the redevelopment plan. So with that, if we could advance the slide to the second page here. This should be sheet A01 of the architectural site plan submission set. And this is the ground floor of the building. So with this, I'll walk you through the biggest revisions to the project. Again, we had seen a massing image of the building and an illustrative perspective rendering. The exterior architecture found on the building remains substantially similar. As noted, the biggest changes, which were outlined well within your professional planner's report, really have to do with where the main residential lobby entrance is and where some of the retail is and some of the residential amenities for the building. So the primary residential lobby is located on the north side of the building. That matches where it was previously located. We've further worked through the layout of the ground floor, where the reception desk is, where mail and package and all of those types of uses are. The commercial retail is predominantly located here on the eastern side of the building, which has visibility and fronts right on that promenade and roundabout as you're coming down the central boulevard on the center axis of the site, which certainly allows for more marketable retail and allows us to better activate the ground plane of the building in that area. The restaurant area post shade in a light orange color, again, is generally located in the same location, which provides for convenient drop-off access off of that circle being planned for there and as shown in the civil site plan. On the west side of the building, we previously had retail that was fronting on that promenade. We've replaced that now with residential amenity space. So we have the fitness center and spa and wellness programs for the 303 residential apartment units are located along the ground floor. The exterior architecture, again, complies with the glazing that's required and new storefront windows that help to activate, the human scale and public realm there along the ground floor. I believe your planner supported those changes for some of the reasons that I just noted, as well as a few others. The other major revision here on the ground floor is where the garage entry is. So the vehicular ingress and egress access to the 5-story garage was relocated from the south side of the building to the north side of the building. That works better with the main entrance to the residential lobby. That also better works with where we are planning for trash and recycling and some of our back-of-house areas that are internal to the building, which are being pushed shade here in a darker gray color. So immediately adjacent to the retail, and I do have a pointer if it works here, immediately adjacent to the retail here is where we have our refuse termination and recycling storage internal to the building for both the residential units as well as the commercial restaurant and retail space. We are providing for a loading area there for SU-30 size vehicles, for 26 to 30 foot long U-Haul type vehicles that might be moving people into Studio One and predominantly 2-bedroom apartment units here, as well as trash hauling and pickup, which is a scheduled and coordinated event compliant with city ordinance, and there would be a building porter on site there greeting either residential move-in operations, deliveries for the retail, or trash and recycle hauling. So those are the major changes really to the residential building. The upper floor plans of the building are found within the slide deck. I'm not going to walk you through those unless there's any specific questions. The building essentially is a 5-story base that is being wrapped, that provides for 5 stories of structured parking that's being wrapped on the majority of the sides with ground floor commercial retail and residential units. Above that 5-story base, we have 2 open-air courtyards that provide for passive and active recreational amenity space. Again, consistent and substantially similar to the prior approvals. We have various setbacks and stepbacks that occur on the units that are oriented towards the water, which create for private terraces. And then lastly, at the roof level of the building, we do have a small active and passive outdoor recreational amenity space for residents of the building. Really great smart use, and again, substantially similar to the prior application. I do have a couple points that I do want to make, and I think I was asked to provide clarification on in either the planning report or the engineering report. But there was a question in respect to the units that are oriented towards the waterfront. 40% of those units that are oriented towards the waterfront are required to have a balcony with a minimum square footage of 64 square feet. We have 48 units that are oriented towards the waterfront, so the requirement is 20, and 23 of those units all have private terraces or balconies with a minimum square footage of 64 square feet. Additionally, there was a question about storage, and there's a requirement within the redevelopment plan that 20% of the units provide a minimum of 200 cubic feet of private rentable storage space. That's essentially a 4x5 secure storage bin or closet. And we have approximately 5,800 square feet of private secure storage space found on levels 2 through 5 of the building, so we more than comply with that requirement found within the redevelopment plan. I guess my last 2 points here that I'll make is the building as designed is largely compliant. We meet the design design requirements found within the redevelopment plan, the mass of the building, the setbacks all comply. The building height of the building is 143 feet 4 inches and 12 stories, where 12 stories and 150 feet is permitted. Previously, as shown, it was actually approximately 12 inches taller. The rooftop appurtenances and mechanical units, their locations are set back from the roof edge. They will all be screened, again, compliant with the requirements of the redevelopment plan. And lastly, the building will be designed to meet the requirements of a LEED Silver certification. There's no requirement to seek a certification, but we did submit a green checklist that demonstrates how the building as designed and intended to be constructed would meet the design requirements of a LEED Silver certification, and certainly is smartly planned. So with that, that concludes my architectural testimony. Happy to answer any questions, Michael, you have or the board does.
Sure, they're just two quick questions. So there are some design requirements for the interior of the units in terms of soundproofing and provision of washer, dryer, cable TV, things like that. Will we comply
Yeah.
with those requirements?
So great question. So I don't believe there are any requirements within the redevelopment plan. There was a question, in the planner's report about sound attenuation between units. I'm not aware of any local ordinance, but the project as designed will be designed to comply with the 2021 version of the International Building Code, which was adopted by New Jersey, which has requirements in terms of STC, which are sound attenuation requirements and ratings, side to side or up to down between the units. We design thousands of these types of luxury mixed-use apartment units across the state. But again, we'll fully comply with the state building code requirements as well as any local ordinance.
And the washer, dryer, cable,
So,
all that?
right, so every unit will have a full-size stackable washer dryer internal to the unit, and I think there was a question about cable TV access. Yes, every unit will have access if a resident chooses to pay for Wi-Fi service or a cable service. Yes, every unit will have that capability, either through a Wi-Fi streaming or through a dedicated line.
Okay. And I actually have one question. So I think it was in Mr. Reichel's report, there was a reference later on in the report to a sign deviation, though I didn't really find one that was identified in there. I think there was one way back, and I think we eliminated it. Is there still one? There isn't, right? I just want to make sure, because he's the right guy to say. Huh?
That wasn't me.
It wasn't in your report? I
No.
thought there was.
No.
All right.
And my
There were no-
understand-
there were sign deviations associated.
No,
with
my
this
understanding
application.
is that the signage as proposed fully complies, and I
Okay.
believe the planning report and/or Mr. Reichel's report stated the same.
Okay. That would conclude my questioning.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Sure, Commissioner Lack?
I have a quick question. I see on the agenda it says relief regarding a.
Yeah,
Is this better? Hello, hello.
That's
hello?
better.
That's better.
yes.
It's good.
That's good.
Okay. It was saying something regarding a second curb cut relief. I just wanted to know if you could even point maybe on what's currently on the screen where the two curb cuts are located and.
That's on the dollar store site? It's on
Yeah,
the dollar store site. There's a curb, so
Sure.
if you know the dollar store site, there, if you're coming south down Avenue A, you got Planet Fitness on your right, and you got that first entrance. You're gonna keep going down a couple hundred feet, there's gonna be a new road there, and there's an access point to the dollar store there. We're closing that, and we're going to be connecting the dollar store into the new road that we're proposing. So that second curb cut is on the Dollar Tree site, not on this site.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners, questions? Okay, I'll move to our professionals down the end.
So, thank you. You went through every question in my report. The one thing I wanted to clarify, so in addition to the EV spaces required by the plan, you and the owner are willing to do an additional 15% of the 407 spaces in Building B4 on top of what's required?
So what is required by the redevelopment plan is that one out of every 30 spaces be a EV parking space. The requirement for building B4, I believe, is 14 spaces. We are providing 55 EV parking spaces, which is technically, we're not obligated to do so, but we are doing that, which is 15% of the required parking by zoning. The required parking by zoning is 361 parking spaces, so 15% of that is 55. And then we're providing 19 spaces day one, essentially EVSE parking spaces. So we comply with the redevelopment plan, and then we have the infrastructure in place then to provide for additional spaces, not only the additional spaces, the additional make-ready spaces that we would bring online, but we're sizing the electrical infrastructure that we can accommodate additional EV parking over time, which is, just smart planning.
Okay, excellent. So I just wanted to confirm that you guys were doing more than what was required.
We are doing
and
more
that
than
we're
what's
Putting that
required,
on
yes.
record. Okay, great. Other than that, you answered my question by discussing soundproofing with the building code. The requirement is much more general than that in the redevelopment plan, which is the same building shall be adjoined in such a manner as to provide maximum soundproofing and privacy between units. And just with your architectural expertise, is that the same thing as complying with the building code essentially? Or is there something else?
So the building will be designed to be above code minimum. So yes, so I think we're meeting the intent of the redevelopment plan, which is not to at least meet code minimum, but we're designing above code minimum, right? So we're designing the market. The last thing this developer or applicant wants to do is design units that have sound attenuation issues.
Excellent. All right, I appreciate it. Thanks for answering my questions.
Okay, thank you. To my left?
I'll be quick. Some just first comment is commend the applicant for, and this is a personal thing with me, is they've made the building finished floors several feet higher than the code requires. So accommodating climate change and sea level rise, it's a nice feature. The second thing is another comment, and it's more speaking towards a resolution compliance matter, which is a concern that the common elements of the site plan, this isn't really architectural, but I forgot to say it earlier, was that the common elements of the site plan require some entity that we can rely on to maintain them in the future. So like if the development happens and gets sold off and different buildings get owned by different folks, is that we need an entity to go to maintain the common elements, and so we'll need to build that into resolution.
Yeah, I think we've actually set up an entity to handle that, or are in the process of. I don't know if we actually did it, but that was our intention as well.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I would ask that any members of the public that have questions for Mr. Johnson regarding his testimony. Okay, come on back.
So just clarification. So only the one building, are we changing the percentage of units, like one bedroom, two bedroom, are all those changing?
Just building B4. So just building B4 is subject to the final site plan application being considered before the board this evening. So the unit mix breakdown and revisions was only in respect to building B4.
Okay. Well, that's much better than I thought, because I had all my numbers ready for all of your 40%. But we're still increasing, which is a concern, and it's a genuine concern, and it should be a concern of everybody in Bayonne who lives here and understands the problem we have with our school systems. Because you are adding a bed, so I'm just going by the number of bedrooms, right? We're gonna take, what you minus, the one bedrooms, we went down, and the two bedrooms went up, and three bedrooms, thank God, went down. But we're still like net about another 30 bedrooms in that building than there is today in the layout, right? Because you minus 21 studios, you minus 32 one bedrooms, but you went up 66 two bedrooms and you went down. So if we just count by bedrooms instead of that, it's about 30 extra bedrooms, which is probably, because they're all in the two bedroom area, that's probably 30 kids in our school. Because when you have two bedrooms, it's for kids in our school. And I know that's not necessarily the onus on the development to provide for schools, but it's a concern for the residents that live here and us taxpayers, and what it costs when there's 30 more kids in a classroom. To start one classroom up it costs, it's a whole new classroom. And the schools that are in that neighborhood right now, one of them, I think they're both closed down and aren't taking any more kids, and kids are being moved to other places. So I love this development. I was on board with this development from day one, but there's always a concern when we start doing multi-bedroom units and the burden it puts on. And if you tell me that it's just a roommate, well, then that's more cars, right? The more you're either having more kids in there that are going to school, or you have kids that are driving, or roommates that are driving. So we're putting more cars there, and we know redevelopment plans don't necessarily truly address with their requirements the real parking that happens. So so that was it, right? So you're just saying that.
Well, respectfully, I don't know that I heard a question, but there was a great comment, and I believe it was about school-age children in respect to the increased bedroom count with Unimix. Our planner's up next, and I think he's better positioned to speak about school-age children for the building. I will say that lessons learned through COVID is we're seeing less roommates, right? We're seeing people needing a home office, so we're seeing couples in a two-bedroom, and that second bedroom becoming a home office. But again, great comment. I think our planner's up next, and he can speak more. I'm not the person to address your
So the question is just
potential
that
question.
only that one building, the density that is changing,
So-
right? All the other buildings are staying as they were
Yes,
originally?
the same answer as your first question is only building B4 is subject to a final site plan application. The testimony with the revised Unimix is only respect of the building B4.
And then just one other question, and I think we talked about you were finishing the walkway to go to Fifth Street as part of Phase 1, that walkway. But when you get to Fifth Street, where are the people walking? Because there's no sidewalks on Fifth Street.
I'm the architect, so I'm happy to answer any questions specific about my testimony.
It's just the street.
Mr. Maselli, is that something your next witness will answer?
Oh, okay. So you changed, and was the nice purple color before that you agreed to add the walkway to Fifth Street, right? The internal walkway that would bring you to Fifth Street as part of Phase 1. But when you walk to Fifth Street, where do you go? There's no sidewalks on
Today,
Fifth
there's
Street.
No, that's correct, and I think the idea was to have the walkway go to Fifth Street. It was a requirement of the city and the redevelopment plan to do that, but right now, there is no walkway right there. In hopes that there will be in the future.
But there's just no, I mean,
There's nothing there right now, no.
There's no walkway, there's no walkway to even get back to Avenue A, it's a street. So you're walking so the new walkway is gonna bring us to the middle of a street.
Yeah, no, right now, there's nothing there, but like I said, I think the priority would be that there would be potentially in the future, but it was required of us to provide a walkway to go there so that in the future, when there's one
Okay,
available,
so-
we connect.
So my question is, there is gonna be no sidewalk built as part of this?
Yeah.
There's no sidewalk being built up Avenue
Sharon,
A?
right, so the reason the city asked for that connection is not to allow people to go to Fifth Street, it's to allow people from Nasarima the ability to walk to Avenue A without going down Fifth Street. It's so that, because there is no sidewalk, that they go through our site safely. That's why they asked for it. It wasn't for us to provide access to Fifth Street, it was the reverse. It was
Okay.
so that people wouldn't have to walk down Fifth Street, which has Palmer asphalt and no sidewalks, that the safe path would be through our site.
Understood, okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just weigh in on that. I was the one who asked for that, and it was really to get access from Fifth Street, as Mike described. And so in this new Phase 1 plan, we'll actually have two ways to get from that Nassarim redevelopment. One would be the waterfront walkway, and the other would be this sidewalk.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that have a question for Mr. Johnson? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Maselli? just for the sake of the evening, we're in a different location. We
Yes.
are utilizing some of the Bayonne Board of Education staff for security this evening, so just, if we could be mindful of that.
Oh,
Are-
yes,
Are
will
we
be
okay
mindful.
to move
Mr.
with our
McDonough
next?
will be mindful. You have our
Okay.
word.
We don't
Um,
want to cut anybody short, but I
no,
do
no,
just
no,
want
no.
to put
We'll-
that out there that we do have some, we're in a different location this evening.
Absolutely, no, we're sensitive to that. We don't want to keep people any
Okay.
longer than we've already kept them. And we will put on a full record, but Mr. McDonough is an expert at speed talking, so.
Thank you.
Mr. McDonough, welcome back.
I do.
Okay, we accept Mr. McDonough. Welcome back up.
Thank you.
You may proceed.
Mr. McDonough, you prepared a zoning analysis for this site. Can you take us through the analysis, please?
Yes, I have. This is an opportunity here to take two really good plans, marry them together, and an opportunity to take good plans and make them even better by linking them together from a circulation standpoint, from a viability standpoint, and in terms of effectuating the centerpiece here, which is that Bayview development that has been previously approved. This remains a variance-free application in terms of the Bayview portion of the site. No increase in the overall number of units here, and again, taking this showpiece project, which is going to transform and advance the redevelopment plan goal to revitalize this large and prominent piece of property in your community, the former A&P site. The other good aspect of this plan, the other good site, is the Brass Foundry site, which we know was a good plan because it involved preservation and adaptive reuse of a beautiful industrial building, converting it from industrial purposes to retail purposes, much like the Silk Lofts building was taking a beautiful industrial building and repurposing it from industrial to residential. Linking the two together here, as you've heard through the witnesses before me, is going to improve the flow, the function, the operation of both of these sites, and again, take two really good plans and make them even better. Again, on the Bayview side, no relief needed whatsoever. On the Brass Foundry side, very minor technical relief, which is actually improvement over the existing conditions. Again, Mr. Clavelle has given you a good roadmap here in terms of the conformance, which is extensive and very long, and the relief, which is very minimal. I see 4 deviations here, or actually 4 variances from your C2 zone district, which is where that Brass Foundry site is located. The first is with respect to section 35-17.5A. That's with respect to the curb cut width, 22 feet, where 10 feet would be the maximum permitted. With the reconfiguration of the driveways here, this is going to be a better zoning alternative, and looking at the benefits of both applications as a whole, or both sites as a whole, would substantially outweigh any detriments, and you've got a good foundation of testimony, again, that this will function adequately, notwithstanding the relief. Likewise, on the Brass Foundry site, we've got relief related to the number of driveway curb cuts, where 2 exist there, and the applicant is relocating the second one, again, in the interest of better and improved circulation, which is going to be a net positive for both sites. Then lastly, with respect to variance relief, we have this finger from the Bayview site that wraps behind the Brass Foundry site that serves no practical purpose for the Bayview site. It's a much better platting of land to square up that piece and give it over to the Brass Foundry site. That is going to trigger technical relief related to the existing building that's there, which is on the setback or on the property line right now. The minimum setback would be 20 feet. This is actually going to move it 12 feet off the rear setback, which is going to be a drastic improvement over the existing condition, notwithstanding the fact that it does need relief from the board, where 20 feet would be the minimum required. And that also ties into the overall balancing here, where the benefits of the application as a whole would outweigh the detriments. Interrelated to that, it's not a variance per se, is relief for not having the lot lines at 90 degrees. As you heard through Matt's testimony, this is actually going to move the site and that lot more into conformance with the zone scheme, which now has an acute angle to it. This is going to move it much closer to that 90-degree angle that the ordinance would require. So the relief is reasonable and appropriate and satisfies the lesser standard for a design exception as well. So on balancing, the positives here substantially outweigh the detriments, and this would clearly promote multiple purposes of the land use law, not the least of which is purpose A, the promotion of the general welfare.
Any substantial impairment to the public good? part of
No
this application?
substantial detriment. You've got a good body of evidence before you and testimony as well from 3 experts before me.
And how about to the redevelopment plan and the zoning ordinance and the zone plan?
This
Any-
will only advance the goals and purposes of the redevelopment plan by taking these 2 plans, making them better, added viability, added safety and efficiency.
Mr. McDonough, there was a question in, I believe, the planner's report about affordable housing. Do we have a redevelopment agreement that addresses our affordable housing obligations?
We do. The redevelopment plan says our obligation, if required, will be set forth in that RDA, and again, that has been set forth. Section 5.03 of the RDA exempts this application project because of the extensive infrastructure and waterfront walkway improvements and the park improvements and stipulation to comply with the statewide non-residential fee.
This application is also asking for a couple of extensions, one for extended zoning protection for the site plan. Is that correct?
That is correct. Similar basis as the prior application based on its sheer size. The MLUL gives the board to move on that zoning protection as well. Remember, the trigger here is 100 units. We're looking at 1,100 units or more than 10 or 11 times greater, so substantially above the minimum threshold to trigger that extended protection.
And this is a 20-year extension, similar to the last one,
20-year
correct?
extension, yes, again, based on the number of units, the significant amount of retail, commercial space, the multiple phases, the streets, the amenities, the parks, the walkways, the waterfront improvements, the on-street parking, and this is not a one-off site. It is a quality site that will take time.
The extension for a year for the preliminary and final major subdivision that we were approved for last time, is that part of this application?
The extension for the major subdivision approval is for 1 year to get that subdivision platted. We wanted to perfect after we obtained all the final approvals, and we have virtually all those approvals now and just need a little more time before the project is firmed up enough to file the major subdivision plat.
RSIS inapplicability, can you just run through that quickly? I think we established that
Sure, we
last time.
have some good clarifiers from DCA in that regard, that RSIS does not apply to enclosed parking structures, which is what we have here. RSIS does not apply to mixed uses. This building is one building, and its uses are integrated and inseparable.
I think that would be it for my questioning of Mr. McDonough. If
Okay,
anybody has any
thank you.
questions.
Commissioners, questions for Mr. McDonough? No? I see. Okay, we're going to go down to the end to Ms. Mack.
Yeah, I just wanted John to comment on the non-residential affordable housing fee. That is a form for your non-residential, and I encourage the applicant to file it now. It takes several weeks for the tax assessor to calculate it, and it will hold up your footings and foundations permit. So I'm asking everybody to try to just move ahead. Takes a few weeks to get done, and then
Loud
you
and
can
clear.
work on the RDA and all the other good ways of how to effectuate it, but no reason not to just get it calculated.
Okay. Any other questions or comments down the end? No? Okay. My other end that I can't see, the left?
No comment, thanks.
Okay, thank you. At this time, if there are any members of the public that have a question for Mr. McDonough regarding their testimony, please come forward. Okay, I don't see any questions from the audience. At this point, I would ask if there are any members of the audience that wish to make a statement regarding this application, whether it be pro or con, please come forward. Seeing no statements, Mr. Maselli, your closing statements, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll keep
You're
it
welcome.
short. The Bayview site plan application is as of right. I think the inclusion of the dollar store site, the foundry site, as everyone calls it, only makes this application better. The deviations are minor. I think the two of them together make a much better project than they did apart, and I would ask the board to approve the application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will say I am happy to see the addition of the traffic light. I think that was something that I recall. There were some concerns last time just about the flow of traffic, so I think that is a nice addition. Additionally, the buffer, because I know, if memory serves, that I do believe we discussed that buffer at the last meeting. So I am happy that is in there. Any commissioners that wish to make a statement? No. Okay. With that said, I am looking for a motion to approve.
Second.
And on the vote, please?
Chairperson Fiamonte. Commissioner Veloz.
Aye.
Commissioner Booker. Commissioner Mayorano. Commissioner Locke. Commissioner Barrow. Application has been approved. We have no resolutions this evening, so therefore a motion to adjourn would be appropriate. Chairperson Fiamonte. Commissioner Veloz.
Aye.
Commissioner Booker. Commissioner Mayorano. Commissioner Locke. Commissioner Barrow.